Chapter 2742 2742 Ling Fifan. Chapter 2742 2742 Ling Fifan. 2742 Ling Fifan. Danger! This was Ling Han's first reaction. With his cultivation, if he entered someplace dangerous, his divine sense would immediately react and give him a warning. However, he immediately shook his head. This place was peaceful and tranquil, and it didn't seem like a dangerous place no matter how he looked at it. Moreover, his divine sense wouldn't miss any detail, so he was certain that no elite had approached him. Perhaps someone dear to him had come across trouble. This was also impossible. Such a feeling would only occur if both parties were in the same dimension. However, his lovers were all inside the celestial guest residence, and the Empress was definitely still in another dimension. Thus, how could he experience such a feeling? He brushed it off as a mistaken sensation. He had been cultivating in earnest for far too long, so perhaps his brain was a bit muddled. He decided to ignore it. However, after a short while, this feeling of apprehension became increasingly strong, so much so that he was unable to ignore it any longer. What's going on? Ling Han decided to put aside the task of searching for the core of the dimension first. He needed to deal with this sensation, or else he would be unable to cultivate properly. This was the martial crystalline realm, a low-level dimension. The most powerful elites in this realm were 7 second-tier heavenly venerates. Because this dimension was located much too far away, they had failed to receive the command of the Flaming Frost realm. Thus, they remained as the rulers and overlords of this dimension. Of course, second-tier heavenly venerates were indeed very powerful as well. In any case, this was also the limit of what this low-level dimension could hold. Otherwise, if they were more powerful and didn't leave, it would be this dimension that crumbled and vanished. In fact, it wasn't that the Flaming Frost realm couldn't extend its influence to this dimension. Rather, it was that all dimensions starting from the martial crystalline realm were low-level dimensions. They possessed far too few elites, so the elites from the Flaming Frost realm chose not to waste their time visiting these dimensions. The cultivators here were extremely committed to the realm wars, and this was because the medium-level dimension above them hadn't launched an invasion against them. As such, they could unleash their full power at the low-level dimension beneath them. Right now, they were on the cusp of victory. Once their dimension advanced, the upper limit of their cultivation level would also be increased. The second-tier heavenly venerates all eagerly anticipated the arrival of such a day. The Yin clan, that unfilial girl, still hasn't changed her mind yet? And Taiyan asked, his face filled with rage and his might overwhelming. This was only natural. He was a second-tier heavenly venerate, so just a glare from him could kill a celestial king at the peak stage of the 9th heaven. Father, she's your daughter. Don't you understand her temper? A young man beside him said with a bitter smile. There were 9 ribbons of iridescent light around him, signifying his status as a 9th heaven celestial king. This was a low-level dimension, so a second-tier heavenly venerate and a 9th heaven celestial king were a formidable force that could crush the world. And Taiyan raised his hand, wanting to slam it down on the armrest of his chair. However, after holding his hand in the air for a while, he ultimately decided against slamming it down. Instead, he heaved a long sigh, saying, "I pampered that girl far too much, never interfering in her matters. Now what? She's actually discussing marriage with those dogs from the Promised City realm. Where does that leave me?" The Promised City realm was the dimension that the martial crystalline realm was attempting to destroy and engulf. That little bastard. He actually dared to seduce my daughter. If I capture him, I'll definitely hack him into 1,000 pieces. And Taiyan said with a humph, "Father!" Right at this moment, a young man ran inside saying, "I've just received this report. Our army achieved an overwhelming victory, and we captured a large number of enemy cultivators. The brat Ling Fifan is also among them." Haha, After faltering for a brief moment, and Tyann immediately roared with laughter. "Bring him over." "I've already sent someone over to grab him," the young man replied. He was also a ninth heaven celestial king, and he was in Tyann's second son in Pinghai. The other ninth heaven celestial king hesitated for a bit before saying, "Father, are you truly going to kill him? Little sister doesn't seem like she's playing around this time. What if she becomes too heartbroken?" He was in Tyann's eldest son and Pingtian, and Tyann glared at him, saying, "He's a dog bastard from the Promised City realm. If I wed my precious daughter to him, wouldn't I essentially be colluding with the enemy? Humph, I'm definitely going to smack that brat to death." Only after a month was Ling Fifin finally brought to the clan. After all, none of them were heavenly venerates, so their speed naturally wasn't impressive. And Tyann personally walked out of the clan residence. He wanted to see for himself just how extraordinary this Ling Fifin was, one that he could actually capture the heart of his dear daughter. A youth sat on the ground with no shackles on his body. However, his cultivation had already been sealed. Even if no one guarded him, he would still be unable to run very far in a day. A mountain river tier cultivator would be able to catch up to him in a single stride. Thus, this young man was sitting on the ground all alone, an indifferent smile on his face. If one looked closely, one would find that his appearance shared a 30% similarity with Ling Han's. Not only was his appearance similar, but even his disposition was similar. And Tyann humphed, saying, "You still dare to remain seated after seeing me?" Ling Fifin picked himself up and clasped his hands, bowing in respect. And Tyann felt even more displeased. How had this coward captured his daughter's heart? "My respects to father-in-law," Ling Fifin said. And Tyann's jaw instantly dropped, speechless. This was no coward at all. This was a fearless hooligan. "Pooh!" And Pinghai couldn't help but splutter with laughter. "Pah!" And Tyann instantly smacked him across the head. This brat actually dared to laugh at his father? Had he grown tired of living? And Pinghai bared his teeth. His father was seething with anger, so that smack had truly been painful. "You only just advanced to the Celestial King tier, so what makes you think you deserve to become my son-in-law?" And Tyann asked. Even though he detested this brat who had seduced his daughter, he had to admit that he was fairly brave. It was also because of this that he was willing to continue this conversation. Ling Fifin wore an apologetic expression as he replied, "In fact, there's nothing special about me. It's just that I'm a bit handsome, I'm an honest person, and also have huge potential that could see me become a heavenly venerate in the future." The corners of Tyann's mouth twitched upon hearing this. "Are you sure you're being apologetic? Are you not just praising yourself?" He detested this kind of careless and superficially clever person. Kill him, he said with a wave of his hand. "Father, father," a woman cried from inside the residence. A beautiful girl with delicate features then ran over, with Pingtian trailing behind her. She grabbed Tyann's elbow and said, "Father, you can't kill him." This woman was Tyann's only daughter and youngest child, and Xiao'er. She was only a few million years old, and she enjoyed much doting from Tyann. And Tyann couldn't help but shoot a glare at his eldest son. He had told him to keep an eye on her and stop her from coming out, yet he had treated his words as nothing but just that, words. Otherwise, with his strength as a ninth heaven celestial king, how could he possibly fail to catch up to his younger sister, someone who had only just become a celestial king? He twirled his beard and asked, "Why can't I kill him?" And Xiao'er gritted her teeth and said, Because I'm already pregnant with his child." Huh. Ling Fifin's jaw instantly dropped to the ground. "I've only touched your hand," he thought to himself. "You can even get pregnant from that? She's truly giving it her all to save me." Meanwhile, Tyann became wild with rage, his hair billowing even though there was no wind. He glared at Ling Fifan with a wicked expression, saying, "Very well, brat. How very impudent of you. You even dared to lay hands on my daughter." Right now, he simply wanted to kill this brat. He reached over to grab Ling Fifan. "Father, if you dare to touch him, I'll commit suicide." And Xiao'er hurriedly shouted, her voice firm and resolute. Chapter 2743. 2743, Grandson. Chapter 2743. 2743, Grandson. 2743, Grandson. And Taiyan forcefully retracted his hand. However, with a single thought, and Xiao'er instantly collapsed to the ground. He was far too powerful, so there was absolutely no need for him to get physical to deal with a measly first heaven celestial king. "Ping Tian, take your sister back inside," he commanded. "Father!" And Ping Tian stepped forward, wanting to persuade his father. And Taiyan shot a glare at him. And Ping Tian instantly fell silent, not daring to say another word. In the clan, only his younger sister wasn't afraid of their father. He and his 6 brothers all respected and feared him. And Taiyan turned his gaze back to Ling Fifan. This brat had to die. Ling Fifan sighed, saying, "By the looks of it, I'm going to die here today." "Father-in-law, aren't you going to give it some more consideration? A son-in-law as outstanding as me is truly very difficult to find. You're already staring death in the face, yet you still insist on speaking with such a glib tongue?" And Taiyan was even more displeased. He was fonder of modest and earnest children, such as the 3rd son of the Yang clan. He had only cultivated for 3 billion years, yet he had already become a 9th heaven celestial king. In the future, he had the ability to become a heavenly venerate. Only such kind of person was worthy of his daughter. He suddenly faltered, looking up at the sky. Whoosh! A figure descended, his hair disheveled and covering his appearance. His clothes were also in tatters, and it was as if he were a beggar. This was naturally Ling Han. He had followed the source of his apprehension, and that had brought him all the way here. The captured young man was the source of his apprehension. Who was this? Why did he cause his heart to waver? Ling Han had been cultivating in earnest for the past epoch, so he hadn't paid any attention to his appearance. Even though his clothes were all treasures, the harsh environments that he traveled through caused them to gradually experience decay. And Ping Hai immediately stepped forward and asked, "Friend, who are you?" Ling Han didn't reply, instead staring at Ling Fifan. Why did this person cause his heart to waver? It was very clear that this person was in a perilous situation, facing the risk of death at any moment. However, what did this have to do with him? Why is this person's appearance so similar to mine? "What's your name?" Ling Han asked. When he spoke the first word, there was struggle in his voice. Indeed, this was his first time speaking in almost an entire epoch. However, when he reached the last word, he had already largely recovered, with his voice exuding a sense of indescribable might. "This junior is Ling Fifan. My respects to senior," Ling Fifan hurriedly replied. This person was his potential savior, so he naturally had to latch on with both hands. "Ling Fifan," Ling Han murmured. This person's surname was actually Ling as well. Perhaps this was his descendant. However, Ling Jianxue was his only son, so perhaps this was his grandson or great-grandson. "You too." And Ping Hai said in rage. He was a 9th heaven celestial king. After all, so were his words really so useless? Moreover, there was still a second tier, heavenly venerate, before them. Was it truly okay for them to ignore him? "What's your relationship with Ling Jianxue?" Ling Han asked. Ling Fifan was truly astonished upon hearing this. He had only planned to randomly grab onto any potential savior. Yet this person truly had a deep relationship with the Ling clan? He faltered for a moment before replying, "He's my father." He then asked, "Senior, you are?" "He's my grandson." Ling Han was astonished. The brat Ling Jianxue had already given him a grandson? However, upon further thought, an entire epoch had already passed. So to say nothing of a grandson, he should have already had great-great-great-great-grandchildren. You too! And Ping Hai shouted through gritted teeth. They were taking things much too far. Ping Hai. And Taiyan said in a solemn voice, even though the man before them was disheveled and in tattered clothing, and even though he didn't exude a single wisp of energy, he still gave him a feeling of extreme danger. Where had this elite come from? However, and Ping Hai didn't possess the good judgment of his father. In his eyes he had already seen all of the heavenly venerates of this realm, and Ling Han wasn't among the ranks of the ninth heaven celestial kings. Thus, what did he need to be afraid of? "I'll capture him," he said as he reached over, grabbing at Ling Han. A murderous glint flashed across Ling Han's eyes. In the past, hundreds of thousands of pseudo-heavenly venerates had died at his hands, yet a measly ninth heaven celestial king dared to attack him? However, he immediately remembered that this wasn't the realm battlefield. This person wasn't a mortal enemy. Thud, thud, thud. After seeing Ling Han's glare, and Ping Hai involuntarily stumbled back. It was as if a legendary beast had locked its eyes on him, causing him to perspire in terror. And Taiyan had no time to console his son. He stared at Ling Han and said in a solemn voice, "Friend, you're an elite from which place?" The words of a second tier, heavenly venerate were naturally different. Wind and clouds suddenly swirled, with even heaven and earth starting to wail. Only at this moment did Ling Han turn his gaze to Taiyan. He nodded and replied, "My name is Ling Han." "Pooh!" Ling Fifan coughed and spluttered upon hearing this. This person was actually his grandfather. But how could there be such a coincidence? Hadn't his grandfather gone to the transcendent dimension? Why had he suddenly appeared here? "Grandpa," he instinctively called. "Ling Han." And Taiyan murmured. He had never heard this name before. However, since Ling Fifan was referring to him as Grandpa, this person was most likely an elite from the Promised City realm. In other words, he was an enemy. Ling Han turned to Ling Fifan and asked, "What's going on?" Even though Ling Fifan couldn't confirm Ling Han's identity, his relationship with Enshoer was no big secret. Thus, he explained the situation to Ling Han. Ling Han nodded in understanding. He then turned to Taiyan and said, "Since the love between them is mutual, why stand in their way?" "Rubbish. Of course you're happy. After all, the one being tricked away isn't your daughter." And Taiyan muttered in his mind. Upon further thought, he realized that if the two youths truly tied the knot, wouldn't he become Ling Han's junior? But how could he allow that? He was the ruler of this dimension. At most, the others could only enjoy a status equal to his. How could they enjoy a status above him? Is he worthy? And Taiyan asked as he pointed at Ling Fifan. Ling Han smiled, replying, "He's my grandson, so of course he's worthy." Even though his voice was calm, it was filled with a sense of dominance. Even Taiyan faltered upon hearing this. However, he immediately bared his teeth. Sure enough, these two shared a bloodline. The grandson was glib of tongue, and his grandfather was also confident for apparently no reason. The Promised City realm was already on the verge of destruction, yet Ling Han was still filled with such confidence. "Then I must ask for a lesson to see just how capable you are," and Taiyan said in a baleful voice. Ling Han was slightly hesitant as he stood with his hands clasped behind his back. If he had spent all of his time on increasing his cultivation level, he would have at least reached the 3rd tier or 4th tier. At that time, he could easily kill a 2nd tier heavenly venerate with a single smack. In reality, however, he had spent all of his time and effort on fusing and condensing his core. Thus, even though his cultivation level hadn't increased, his battle prowess had definitely soared to great heights. As for how high, even Ling Han didn't know. It had already been a very long time since his last battle. What if his strike was too powerful, and he accidentally smacked Antaion to death? You're afraid? Antaion asked. He had truly been enraged by the grandfather and grandson duo of the Ling clan. It was because of this that he uttered such a taunt. Ling Han replied honestly, I'm considering how much power I should use. Otherwise, it won't be good if I accidentally smack you dead. Fuck. Ling Fifin immediately nodded in his mind. This was definitely his grandfather. They were definitely related by blood. His manner of speaking was exactly the same as his. As for whether Ling Han was truly capable, hopefully his words weren't empty threats. Chapter 2744. 2744 Dare to Battle? Chapter 2744. 2744 Dare to Battle. 2744 Dare to Battle. An alliance agreed upon verbally was naturally unreliable, so having the two clans tied together through marriage was naturally far more secure. One was the most outstanding son of the Yang clan, and one was the young princess of the Yin clan. Such a marriage would naturally solidify their alliance, making it turn into an indestructible one. And Antaion was instantly enticed by this offer. He had already been satisfied with Yang Xianlong to begin with, so adding to that an alliance, he felt an urge to accept this offer with no further thought. Ling Fifin was extremely anxious, and he hurriedly turned to Ling Han, shouting, Grandpa! If his grandfather didn't say anything, his granddaughter-in-law would disappear just like that. Ling Han sighed upon hearing this. Why was he forced into a fight just to get a granddaughter-in-law? Was he truly a magnet for trouble? Nephew, he said. Pooh! Ling Fifin felt a strong urge to vomit blood. Meanwhile, Yang Xianlong and Yang Jiha both glanced over with confused expressions. Who was this disheveled beggar? He was actually referring to Antaion as nephew. How did he dare? That was a second tier, heavenly venerate. Antaion's expression was dark, and it was as if flames were about to burst from his eyes. He could barely contain his murderous urge. Ling Han waved his hands with a smile, saying, all right, let's not talk about this first. Ahem. I've also brought my grandson here today to make an offer of marriage. I hope the Yin clan can agree to this proposal. All right. Antaion said coldly. Yang Xuanlong's expression instantly changed upon hearing this. However, Yang Jiha wasn't worried at all. He understood Antaion very well. Sure enough, Antaion continued. Which maidservant have you set your eyes on? She's all yours. Ling Han had continued to refer to him as nephew time and time again just then, so now it was his turn to return the favor. Ling Han faltered for a moment before roaring with laughter and saying, Who would have thought? You're also a fairly humorous person, huh? I'm especially eager to meet my granddaughter-in-law now. She's likely also a very interesting person. See, what's so bad about my grandson? Even though his cultivation is slightly weaker, defeating that small fry at the same cultivation will be as easy as a wave of his hands. Ling Han said as he wrapped an arm around Ling Fifin's shoulder. He then pointed his finger at Yang Xianlong. Yang Xianlong was infuriated. So be it if he wanted to praise his own grandson, but was it really necessary to use him as a stepping stone? He humphed and said, I can suppress such trash with a simple turn of my palm. Ling Fifin naturally wouldn't back down. He pointed at Yang Xianlong and said, If we battle at the same cultivation level, you're nothing but an insect. I can crush you to death with a single stomp. Ling Han was all smiles upon hearing this. Ling Jianxue was far too modest and calm, and that made him no fun at all. He was nowhere near as interesting as this grandson. Do you dare to battle? Ling Han asked, further fanning the flames. Chapter 2745. 2745 Special Training. Chapter 2745. 2745 Special Training. 2745 Special Training. New to march forward. This time, I'll leave a wisp of power in your body. If your opponent unleashes a heavenly venerate technique, activate this power and use it to rival him. Otherwise, battle with your own strength. Okay, Ling Fifan said with a nod. After traveling for one epoch, Ling Han had traversed through heaven knew how many dimensions. Even if he weren't specifically looking for them, he still managed to obtain many celestial medicines and divine metals. However, trying to rapidly raise Ling Fifan's strength would still be an impossible task. Thus, he planned to activate the power of his core to leave a wisp of power in Ling Fifan's body. That way, he could use it to deal with his opponent's heavenly venerate technique. If it were any other person, even if it were the Empress Lu Yutong, or one of the other women, Ling Han would be unable to do this. However, Ling Fifan shared his blood, and he was an extension of his life. Thus, this possibility could be achieved. Ling Han carefully activated his core. If it reached a critical stage of circulation, even Ling Han would be ruthlessly blown apart. A single sliver at a time, Ling Han carefully manipulated this power. This power couldn't exit his body, yet thanks to their blood relation, wisps of power could still flow into Ling Fifan and temper his body. Ling Han was astonished by how smoothly things went. He had initially thought that he could only leave a wisp of this power in Ling Fifan's body. Unexpectedly, however, he could even use it to temper his body. Ling Fifan had only just advanced to the Celestial King tier, so if he tempered his grandson's body for close to 10 years, the results would most likely be astonishing. However, Ling Fifan screamed in agony. He had never practiced body arts before, so his physique wasn't especially powerful. With this power wantonly coursing through his body, he naturally couldn't help but scream. His skin started to crack, with blood spraying into the air. He appeared as miserable as could be. However, Ling Han acted as if he couldn't see this. If Ling Fifan failed to endure even this, then there would be no need for him to screw over the young girl from the clan. He would be better off training for another few 100 million years. With the acceleration of time, it wasn't long before 9 years flowed by. Ling Han finally retracted his hands. Meanwhile, Ling Fifan scrambled up and fled as quickly as he could. It was as if Ling Han were a terrifying beast. He swore that he would never do this again. "Test your strength," Ling Han said. Ling Fifan swung his arm before involuntarily exclaiming, "The speed of my fist has increased several hundredfold." This was simply unfathomable. Just based on this fact alone, his strength could already increase several dozenfold or even several hundredfold. Chapter 2746 2746 Might Unleashed. Chapter 2746 2746 Might Unleashed. 2746 Might Unleashed. Ling Fifan was astonished as he looked at Ling Han. Was this Ling Han's ability? This was far too incredible. In just 3 days, even though he felt like several years had passed, his strength had undergone a complete transformation. This was absolutely godly. "Stinky brat, hurry up and give yourself a clean. It's time to fight for your wife," Ling Han said as he kicked his grandson in the rear. Ling Fifan came to his senses and immediately scampered off. After a while, Ling Han and Ling Fifan left the celestial guest residence and headed back to the clan. It had to be said that the clan was an extremely capable clan. In less than 3 days, they had already finished the reconstruction of the clan, which exuded the domineering aura of a heavenly venerable tier clan. In fact, weaker-willed people wouldn't even be able to approach the clan. Instead, they would go weak in the knees. Ling Han appeared as calm as could be as he walked with his hands clasped behind his back. Meanwhile, Ling Fifan obediently followed after him. "How are your parents?" Ling Han asked. "They're as lovey-dovey as could be. It's as if they're joined together at the hip, and they're never apart from each other no matter what they do," Ling Fifan replied as he fiddled around with a great sword in his hand. This was a celestial tool that Ling Han had only just forged for him. With Ling Han's current ability, forging a divine metal billet into a finished weapon was naturally as simple as a single thought. They're traveling and sightseeing all the time, and they even traveled through numerous dimensions. Right now, they're helping the Promised City realm resist invasion. Thanks to them, I was forced to become a soldier as well. In the end, I was taken prisoner, Ling Fifan said through sighs. Ling Han was surprised upon hearing this. Able to travel through dimensions? Had Ling Jinxue already become a heavenly venerate? What cultivation is your father at? Ling Han asked. Ninth Heaven, Celestial King. Ling Han was even more surprised. As a Ninth Heaven, Celestial King, he could already travel through the dimensions? Did he truly possess such strength? Father was extremely fortunate, and he obtained an extremely mysterious pearl. As long as he activates it, he can conceal his presence such that even heavenly venerates can't discover him, Ling Fifan explained. Only at this moment did Ling Han understand. Otherwise, he refused to believe that a Ninth Heaven Celestial King could truly travel through dimensions. In any case, traveling through the myriad worlds might allow Ling Jinxue to discover rare opportunities that could potentially help him become a heavenly venerate. This was Ling Jinxue's cultivation method. As they chatted, they eventually arrived before the gates of the clan. There was already a person waiting for them, and upon seeing their arrival, they immediately bowed and said, Our respects to Lord. This greeting was aimed at Ling Han, yet Ling Fifan proudly nodded in response, as if the greeting were aimed at him. This almost angered the person to death was a Third Heaven Celestial King. Ling Han raised a hand and said, Lead the way. The Third Heaven Celestial King didn't dare to defy Ling Han, so he obediently led the way. A short while later, the three of them arrived at the guest hall, wherein Taiyan and Yang Jihe were sitting in the master seat and guest seat, respectively. Meanwhile, Anxiouer and Yang Xianlong were standing behind them. Anxiouer's eyes instantly lit up when she saw Ling Fifan. Yang Xianlong saw this, and he involuntarily clenched his fists, swearing in his mind that he would definitely find an opportunity to kill Ling Fifan in a while. Yang Xianlong had only met Anxiouer a few times before, so it couldn't be said that he liked her. However, for the sake of his father's grand plan, it was vital that he married Anxiouer. In any case, he wasn't against this, as Anxiouer was genuinely a noble woman who was extremely delicate and beautiful. She was completely worthy of him. Thus, he didn't oppose this marriage. However, she had yet to be married, yet she was already making eyes at another man. How could he accept this? How could he not develop killing intent? Wasn't the greatest hate of a man being cucked by someone else? Begin the battle, and Taiyan said with a wave of his hand. A small tower appeared in midair, measuring 9 levels in height. It was golden in color and exuding an aura of chaos as if it belonged to the primal beginning of heaven and earth. This was a heavenly venerate tool. This was a battle between 2 celestial kings, so it was naturally better for them to do battle inside there. Otherwise, the newly reconstructed clan might be obliterated again. The 2 youths leaped toward the tower, and Anxiouer couldn't help but say, Be careful, Fifan. Rest assured, I can take on 10 of this trash by myself, Ling Fifan said with a wave of his hand. He appeared as casual as could be. Yang Xianlong was almost angered to death, with his killing intent becoming even more intense. He stepped into the treasured tower, deciding that he would definitely kill Ling Fifan. Even Taiyan and Yang Jihe wore displeased expressions, with Taiyan saying, Anxiouer, ladies need to be more reserved and modest. As for Yang Jihe, he humphed to express his displeasure. Meanwhile, Ling Han laughed heartily, saying, Young lady, come here, come here. And Anxiouer already knew his identity, so she immediately walked over, curtsying slightly and saying, My respects to Grandpa. Ling Han retrieved a spatial god tool, holding it over and saying, Here, a greeting gift, take it. Thank you, Grandpa, and Anxiouer said obediently. However, upon observing it with her divine sense, She couldn't help but gasp. There were countless high-level celestial medicines inside this spatial god tool, and there were even several pieces of divine metal. Their value was immense. This greeting gift was absolutely exquisite. Meanwhile, inside the Heavenly Venerate tool, the battle between Ling Fifan and Yang Xianlong had also begun. Inside this space, everything was subject to Tian's whims. Thus, he commanded the Heavenly Venerate tool to suppress Yang Xuanlong's cultivation to the first heaven. Even so, Yang Xianlong definitely still possessed a huge advantage. Firstly, his cultivation was at the peak stage of the first heaven. Secondly, he was more familiar with the regulations, so he was naturally able to channel them with more nuance and skill. However, Ling Fifan's response astonished him greatly. This was because Ling Fifan didn't attempt to draw on the regulations or whatnot. Instead, he immediately charged over to pummel the opponent. This was far too classless. Was such close-quarters combat any different from a scuffle between hooligans? Was his opponent really a celestial king? However, he immediately discovered that Ling Fifan's punches were astonishingly powerful, with his chest throbbing with each punch that he withstood. He felt terrible, and he truly wanted to cough blood. Moreover, not only were Ling Fifan's punches powerful, but they were also quick. It wasn't long before he couldn't keep up. He had initially been filled with confidence. After all, what did it matter even if his opponent were genuinely freakish? He could still unleash his Heavenly Venerate techniques. This was something that Ling Fifan definitely couldn't block. Now, however, what opportunity did he have to unleash the Heavenly Venerate technique? Pung, pung, pung. Ling Fifan's fists rained down with fury, giving Yang Xianlong no opportunity to unleash his trump card. Incapable scum, you actually dared to lay eyes on my wife. Ling Fifan spat with extreme disdain as he continued to pummel his opponent. Yang Xianlong was completely unable to reply. All he could do was defend with all his might. However, he was bound to make a mistake. One could fail in their attacks 100 times or 10,000 times with no consequence at all. However, defending was different, and as long as a single mistake was committed, the consequences would be catastrophic. Under Ling Fifan's relentless attacks, Yang Xianlong was eventually struck by a fist, which caused his bones to immediately snap. He groaned in pain. At the same time, he retreated in a hurry. If they continued to battle head-on, he would definitely be defeated. After creating enough distance, he started preparing his trump card. Ling Fifan, it all ends now, he roared as he raised his hands to the sky, flickers of white flames dancing across his palms. They were radiant daylight flames, capable of annihilating all matter. However, Ling Fifan couldn't help but feel slightly disappointed. He had initially thought that his furious attacks would strip Yang Xianlong of the opportunity to launch his trump card. However, prodigies were prodigies, after all, and Yang Xianlong was ultimately able to break free from his attacks. He shook his hands, feeling intense pain in his bones. Indeed, his body art had been rapidly elevated in just a few days, meaning that he didn't possess a physique powerful enough to match it. Thus, the relentless attacks just then had placed a huge burden on his body. Stop dreaming. Your only fate is to be pummeled into paste, Ling Fifan said with a laugh. Chapter 2747. 2747, you're a pseudo-heavenly venerate. Chapter 2747. 2747, you're a pseudo-heavenly venerate. 2747, you're a pseudo-heavenly venerate. In the outside world, and Tian and Yang Jihao were both astounded. Ling Fifan was actually this powerful. Using body arts to suppress one's opponent is the battle technique of heavenly venerates. Don't tell me that this brat has already interacted with the unique power of heaven and earth and used it to temper his body. The two heavenly venerates exchanged a confused look. A first heaven celestial king being able to interact with the unique power of the realm? This was simply unfathomable. regardless of how prodigious one was. However, apart from this, was there any other explanation? And Tai En couldn't help but waver. Yang Xianlong only possessed the ability to potentially become a heavenly venerate. Yet if Ling Fifan had truly interacted with the unique power of heaven and earth, he was destined to eventually become a heavenly venerate. In fact, he didn't really care which dimension Ling Fifan was from. After all, a mighty heavenly venerate naturally possessed an equally broad mind. What he cared about more were potential and natural disposition. Even Xiaoer was surprised. In the eyes of a girl in love, their lover would naturally be all-capable. However, she was also a celestial king, and she was more so the daughter of a heavenly venerate. Thus, her observation skills were naturally extraordinary. In the past, Ling Fifan definitely hadn't been so powerful. What's going on? Meanwhile, Ling Han was slightly unsatisfied. In fact, Ling Fifan's abilities included far more than just this. However, his physique was inferior, so it prevented him from unleashing any more power. Otherwise, his own body would collapse first. How should I teach the indestructible heavens scroll to my grandson? Ling Han mulled over this problem. He could borrow the Black Tower and use it to forcefully teach his grandson, just like how he had learned it. Otherwise, he could modify the indestructible heavens scroll and structure it like the 9 transformations divine scroll. That way, it could be learned one scroll at a time before ultimately being combined together. However, borrowing the Black Tower at this moment would be impossible. Thus, Ling Han felt like the latter option was the more reliable one. He immediately started to ponder this problem, thinking about how he could deconstruct the indestructible heaven scroll. Meanwhile, inside the Heavenly Venerate tool, Yang Xianlong started to launch his counterattack. He charged at Ling Fifan, unleashing the radiant flames from his palm as he did so, with the flames transforming into 2 white snakes that lunged at Ling Fifan. Ling Fifan roared with laughter, unafraid as he faced this attack head-on. "You're seeking death," Yang Xianlong said in his mind. After channeling this heavenly venerate technique, his battle prowess could rival that of Third Heaven celestial kings. This certainly wasn't something that newbie celestial kings could rival. Die. Hurry up and die. Wang. When the flaming white snakes crashed into Ling Fifan, a golden bell immediately materialized around him, with numerous golden symbols pulsating on its surface. The golden bell successfully stopped the white snakes in their tracks, preventing them from advancing another inch. Yang Xuanlong's jaw involuntarily fell to the ground. How was this possible? He had never believed that Ling Fifan could also possess a heavenly venerate technique, and the reason for this was simple. It would be useless even if Ling Fifan had the aid of a heavenly venerate, as the bare minimum requirement for channeling a heavenly venerate technique was reaching the 9th heaven. For example, even he could only channel a heavenly venerate technique for 15 minutes at most. Even so, he would still end up wounded and completely exhausted. Now, however, Ling Fifan had actually blocked his heavenly venerate technique. There was only one explanation. He had also mastered a heavenly venerate technique. How was this possible? His eyes bulged in disbelief. He had initially thought that he could crush his opponent with ease, yet it seemed like he was the one who was about to be slain in the end. Ha ha ha! Little loach, what else do you have to say? Ling Fifan chuckled as he hurriedly seized this opportunity to attack. This defensive ability didn't belong to him, so he had no way of retracting it after it had been activated. Moreover, it would only last for 15 minutes. If Yang Xianlong avoided him now and unleashed his vicious heavenly venerate technique after waiting for his extreme defensive ability to vanish, he would definitely be screwed. Thus, he had to dispose of his opponent as quickly as possible. Pung! 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 He unleashed his fists of fury, relentless and overwhelming as he attempted to submit his opponent. Yang Xianlong was shocked time and time again, and his morale had already fallen into a ditch. Thus, what more power and confidence did he have to defend? After blocking a few strikes, His face was quickly pummeled black and blue. Fortunately, Ling Fifan didn't attempt to unleash any fatal strikes. He simply rendered Yang Xianlong severely wounded and unable to battle. And Taiyan shook them out in a timely manner and said, "Enough, we'll end it here." "Fifan!" And Xiu'er called as she ran over, delight and joy on her face. She hadn't imagined that the issue would be resolved so smoothly. "Heh, I already told you, didn't I? I'll shatter all obstacles and make you my wife," Ling Fifan said, starting to blow his own trumpet again. "Humph, you people are cheating," Yang Jihe said coldly. The golden bell was still pulsating around Ling Fifan, making it as clear as could be. He resolutely lashed out, grabbing at Ling Fifan and announcing, "Cheaters deserve death." He was going to kill Ling Fifan. That way, his son wouldn't have any other opponent. "Brother Yang, please show some mercy," and Taiyan said, hurriedly stepping forward to obstruct him. He had also noticed that Ling Fifan's defensive ability was abnormal, with the golden bell capable of being summoned but not unsummoned. Rather than one's own ability, this appeared more like the ability of some treasure. However, he didn't mind this, as Ling Fifan had already displayed his freakish abilities. As a first heaven celestial king, his body had already been tempered by the unique power of the dimension. In other words, he was destined to become a heavenly venerate in the future. If he passed on such a son-in-law, where would he find another one? Thus, he decided to protect Ling Fifan. Pum! The two heavenly venerate exchanged a blow, unleashing a shock wave that instantly reduced the clan residence to ruins. "Brother-in, I didn't do that on purpose," Yang Jie said upon seeing this, hurriedly retracting his hand. Destroying someone else's residence could be regarded as a small matter or big matter, depending on the owner. And Taiyan's expression was extremely dark. His clan residence had been destroyed 2 times in 3 days. Just who in the world had he offended? Ling Han stepped forward and said, "You want to kill my grandson?" To cheat in a fair battle, and to harbor such impure intentions, what does it matter even if I do kill him? Yang Jihe replied proudly. He naturally didn't need to show Ling Han any respect. After all, Ling Han was an opponent, and he more so didn't think that Ling Han was very powerful. "No one can touch my family. Since you want to kill my grandson, I'll send you on your way first." Ling Han replied coldly, a baleful look in his eyes. "A battle in the sky," Yang Jihe said. With a single stride, he directly flew into the sky. He didn't dare to battle on the ground. Otherwise, if he turned the surroundings into a vast sea, and Taiyan would very likely truly become wild with rage. Ling Han naturally wasn't afraid of him. With a slight bend of his knees, followed by an explosive release, he also shot into the sky, his speed even exceeding Yang Jihe's. Thus, he caught up to Yang Jihe before the former could even reach the desired height. Boom! He immediately unleashed a furious punch. Yang Jihe was both enraged and astonished. This person didn't respect any fucking customs. Was he truly so giddy to attack? However, Ling Han's strike was both quick and vicious, so he had no option but to respond. Pum! He exchanged a blow with Ling Han, the deafening explosions of their clash causing the space around them to shatter into pieces. At the same time, they were both sent flying back. Boom! Heaven and earth responded, with arcs of lightning striking down at Yang Jihe. However, they completely ignored Ling Han. Yang Jihe didn't understand this. His opponent had clearly wielded the power of a second-tier heavenly venerate. So why wasn't he being targeted by heaven and earth? Of course, this was even though these strikes were inconsequential to heavenly venerates. He carefully mulled over this, and his expression quickly transformed into one of deep shock. You didn't unleash heavenly venerable tier power. What powers were heavenly venerates most renowned for? This was naturally the 6 fundamental powers of the Genesis world, or the unique power of the dimensions. However, he hadn't detected any of these powers in Ling Han's punch just then. "You're a pseudo-heavenly venerate!" he exclaimed again. However, his frown grew even deeper. Chapter 2748. 2748 Battling a Second-Tier Heavenly Venerate. Chapter 2748. 2748 Battling a Second-Tier Heavenly Venerate. 2748 Battling a Second-Tier Heavenly Venerate. Ling Han was a pseudo-heavenly venerate. This explained why he hadn't been targeted by heaven and earth. Moreover, pseudo-heavenly venerates naturally couldn't wield the 7 most powerful powers. The problem was, however, that this pseudo-heavenly venerate could rival second-tier heavenly venerates had the world been turned upside down. And Taiyan was also stunned. How is this possible? Thinking carefully about his previous exchange with Ling Han, however, he realized that he had been enraged, and thus had failed to make any observations. Mulling over it now, sure enough, he discovered that Ling Han hadn't used any fundamental power of heaven and earth. This person was powerful in his own right, so much so that he could even rival second-tier heavenly venerates. It can't be right. Ling Fifan also murmured. Phut! His grandpa was far too powerful, no. A pseudo-heavenly venerate being able to battle against a second-tier heavenly venerate? This was a never-before-seen accomplishment. A mere pseudo-heavenly venerate dares to challenge me? Yang Jiha bellowed in rage after coming to his senses. Just like the other cultivation tiers, there were also huge gulfs between each minor level in the heavenly venerable tier. Pseudo-heavenly venerates were nothing more than just that. They were far weaker than second-tier heavenly venerates. So what if you're a second-tier heavenly venerate? See how I pummel you. Ling Han said coldly. Today he would slay a second-tier heavenly venerate for fun. Die. Yang Jiha roared as he launched a powerful attack. He directly unleashed a heavenly venerate technique, with 2 balls of white flames appearing in his hands. With a single sweeping motion, he thrust them toward Ling Han. Yang Xianlong had also unleashed the same technique before, but the 2 balls of flames had only transformed into snakes. Now, however, it was completely different, with the 2 balls of flames transforming into heaven-scorching flames that spread through the sky. Ling Han humphed as he channeled the indestructible heaven scroll, causing a golden bell to materialize around him, symbols flashing on its surface. He then charged at Yang Jiha, swinging his fists with fury and ferocity. Pum! 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 Yang Jiha naturally wouldn't back down, choosing to face Ling Han head-on. Heavenly venerates all tempered their bodies with the 7 fundamental powers. The higher their cultivation, the more of these powers they would be able to draw on. First-tier heavenly venerates could only draw on a single power, while second-tier heavenly venerates could draw on 2. This was as clear as could be. Heavenly venerates naturally all possessed powerful body arts. Yet, because the regulations were capped at the 9th heaven, such abilities could only be used as supportive ones. Yang Jiha's body art was no weaker than that of Ling Han. After all, he was a second-tier heavenly venerate who had already tempered his body with one of the 6 fundamental powers. Moreover, he had been at this cultivation level for heaven knew how many epochs. The 2 of them exchanged blows, with each collision causing the space around them to shatter. Countless celestial bodies fell, affecting the entire martial crystalline dimension. Thus, only a few days passed before several other heavenly venerates hurried over. This was an intense battle between heavenly venerates, so how could they dismiss it? There were second-tier heavenly venerates, first-tier heavenly venerates, and also pseudo-heavenly venerates. Even though this was a low-level dimension, it was already infinitesimally close to being a medium-level dimension. Thus, there was a respectable number of heavenly venerates. When they discovered that Yang Jiha's opponent was only a pseudo-heavenly venerate, they couldn't help but gawk in surprise, speechless with shock. How could such a ferocious, pseudo-heavenly venerate exist in the world? Brethren, do you know of this person's background? A second-tier heavenly venerate asked in Taiyan. The grandfather of my daughter's future husband. And Taiyan naturally wouldn't say this, so he could only shake his head and reply, I'm not sure either. This was indeed the truth. Apart from Ling Han's name, he didn't know anything else about him. The elites were all extremely curious. At the same time, they also remained slightly on guard. This was because this pseudo-heavenly venerate certainly wasn't from their realm. In case he was from the Promised City realm, would he perhaps bring change to the already foregone conclusion? Annihilating the Promised City realm and raising the level of our dimension, thereby allowing us to comprehend the fundamental power of the Genesis world, is an opportunity of a lifetime. We can't let anyone ruin our plans, the elite said. Once Yang Jiha was defeated, they would immediately charge forward to attack. They wouldn't give Ling Han the opportunity to leave alive. Of course, only the second-tier and first-tier heavenly venerates would have the right to attack. Even so, the first-tier heavenly venerates would still have to team up first, lest they wanted to be obliterated in a flash. And Taiyan pondered for a moment before saying, perhaps this person has come from a higher-level dimension. The elites exchanged glances with each other. Even though the neighboring medium-level dimension hadn't invaded them, they had still set up a comprehensive defensive line at the two-realm passageway. Elites constantly guarded this area. Indeed, they should already burn incense to the gods to thank the fact that this higher-level dimension hadn't invaded them. Would they dare to take initiative to launch an attack? Thus, they knew nothing about the neighboring medium-level dimension. Moreover, no one from that dimension had ever traveled over, either, with absolutely no communication between the two dimensions. They coexisted in a peaceful manner, with neither side offending the other. Was this person genuinely an elite from the medium-level dimension? This was possible, because this pseudo-heavenly venerate was far too powerful. It was very likely that only higher-level dimensions could raise such a freak. They all became hesitant. If Ling Han were truly a cultivator from that higher-level dimension, did that signify that their neighboring dimension was finally planning to target them? The higher level a dimension, the more numerous and more powerful their elites would be. This was just like how they could suppress the Promised City realm. Moreover, even if that dimension wasn't much more powerful than them, this still meant that they would need to dispatch a large number of elites to battle against them. At that time, could they still engulf the Promised City realm? They all watched on with heavy hearts. Fortunately, there was still the existence of the dimension itself. This was the most powerful weapon. However, it was also because of this that they were still struggling to defeat the Promised City realm. In the skies, Ling Han and Yang Jiha continued to do battle. Ling Han was fighting in an extremely conservative manner, and this was because he was still unclear about his own strength. He needed something to compare it against. After battling for a long time, he was finally able to make an accurate assessment of his own strength. His ordinary battle prowess could roughly reach the peak stage of the second tier. After channeling his heavenly venerate techniques, it would naturally increase even further. However, heavenly venerate techniques varied, with each being different in might. Thus, it was difficult to say what level he would reach. In fact, this wasn't his full strength. However, limited by his cultivation level, he didn't dare to unleash his full strength. Otherwise, he might accidentally kill himself before even wounding his opponent. That would be as foolish as could be. Ling Han channeled the 9 transformations divine scroll to elevate his battle prowess. He then channeled the 5 elements lightning technique. With his current power, he could easily channel 2 heavenly venerate techniques. Yang Jiha also responded with heavenly venerate techniques. However, he had only mastered a single heavenly venerate technique, so he used this to launch a flurry of furious attacks at Ling Han. Even so, it was as if he were being ganged up on by 2 equal-level heavenly venerates, and this made him feel immense pressure. Heavenly venerates were all supreme prodigies, however, so even though Yang Jiho was at a disadvantage, he still remained stubborn and steadfast. In fact, he unleashed brilliant attacks from time to time, threatening to turn the tables on Ling Han. However, it was a shame that Ling Han still possessed a third heavenly venerate technique. While channeling the indestructible heaven scroll, he would be invincible. Yang Jiho was flabbergasted. Did this person's strength have no limit? He could actually channel 3 heavenly venerate techniques at once. Even second-tier heavenly venerates would be so exhausted that they would quickly collapse, right? What was the strength of heavenly venerates? Apart from their bodies being tempered by fundamental power and their body arts being powerful, their other strength was their ability to wield the fundamental power of heaven and earth. It was because of this that heavenly venerates could genuinely channel heavenly venerate techniques. Even so, there would eventually come a point where they ran out of energy. Ling Han's energy consumption was far too abnormal. As a heavenly venerate, Yang Jihan naturally wouldn't lack strong conviction and willpower. He gritted his teeth and persisted. However, following the continual depletion of his energy, he became less and less confident. If this continued, he would eventually suffer defeat. Chapter 2749. 2749 The Surrender of a Heavenly Venerate. Chapter 2749. 2749 The Surrender of a Heavenly Venerate. 2749 The Surrender of a Heavenly Venerate. Yang Jiha was extremely powerful. After all, each heavenly venerate was a supreme prodigy. This was especially the case since he was someone who had cultivated to the pinnacle in a low-level dimension. Regardless of whether it was talent, knowledge, or willpower, he had reached the apex. Unfortunately, his opponent was Ling Han. He was a freak who had extracted the unique power of heaven knew how many realms. Moreover, he had even fused them together to form a core that endlessly provided him with power. This gave him the right to rival second-tier heavenly venerates while still being a pseudo-heavenly venerate. Moreover, this power was boundless, and it was as if he were a dimension himself. This was the most terrifying aspect. Boom! 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 Yang Jiha was already giving it his all, yet he was still unable to break free from Ling Han's suppression. Everyone watched on in speechlessness. Was a second-tier heavenly venerate about to be defeated? This pseudo-heavenly venerate was definitely going to defy the heavens. Sweet Lord, so this is my grandpa? Ling Fifan gasped. He had heard innumerable stories about Ling Han's strength, yet just hearing about them was far too abstract. Moreover, it was entirely possible that those stories had been exaggerated. By the looks of things now, however, those stories hadn't been exaggerated at all. In fact, they had barely described a tenth of Ling Han's freakish power. How could a person be so freakish? Meanwhile, Yang Xianlong was rendered completely speechless as he glanced at Ling Fifan. He had initially planned to charge forward and capture Ling Fifan once his father achieved victory. He would then brutally humiliate him. Now, however, his dreams had been absolutely crushed. Ling Fifan was indeed weaker than him, yet Ling Han was completely capable of pummeling his father. Thus, if he still dared to act on his impulse, he would truly be asking for a beating. Friends, no matter what, Brother Yang is still someone from our dimension. We can't watch on and allow him to be defeated, can we? A heavenly venerate said. His title was Ancestral River, and he was a second-tier heavenly venerate. Another second-tier heavenly venerate nodded in agreement. The internal conflict among them was another matter. Right now, however, this was something that pertained to another dimension, so they had to cooperate. Brethren, what do you say? The Ancestral River heavenly venerate asked. Counting Yang Jiha as well, they had 4 second-tier heavenly venerates on their side. The other 3 were doing battle on the 2-realm battlefield. And Taiyan shook his head, saying, there's no need to further exacerbate this conflict. After all, it only started off as a small matter. Indeed, this was only a small conflict between three youths. Was there any need to involve so many second-tier heavenly venerates? Since brother and is unwilling to step forward, let the two of us resolve this problem instead, the ancestral river heavenly venerate said. He then strode forward to join the battle. Another heavenly venerate also roared as he soared into the sky. Upon seeing reinforcements, Yang Jiha instantly rediscovered his confidence. At their lofty height, would they still care about the judgment of mere mortals? So what if they ganged up on their opponent, who dared to disparage them? The three heavenly venerates teamed up to attack Ling Han. Ling Han was unfazed. His strength came from his own body, so he was confident in his invincibility. Let's battle it out. He continued to channel the three heavenly venerate techniques, with the core in his body funneling power into him and allowing him to continue the high-intensity battle. However, the three heavenly venerates were no pushovers either, and they were completely able to rival Ling Han after teaming up. The battle continued for a month, yet it was still impossible to decide a victor. Friends, hear me out, would you? Why don't you all stop for a moment? And Taiyan said. The ancestral river heavenly venerate and the others all nodded in their minds. Ling Han's strength was seemingly infinite, and they couldn't see any hope of suppressing or defeating him. Thus, they were better off ending the battle now. However, Ling Han was unwilling to accept this. After all, Yang Jiha had wanted to kill his grandson. Ignoring the ancestral river heavenly venerate and the four knights heavenly venerate, Ling Han continued to furiously attack Yang Jiha. You! The ancestral river heavenly venerate and the four knights heavenly venerate were both infuriated. They had already stopped, yet Ling Han was still shamelessly continuing. They had no option but to rejoin the battle. 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. The battle between the four heavenly venerates was intense and chaotic. However, the ancestral river heavenly venerate and the others couldn't compare to Ling Han, who had a power core in his body that endlessly provided him with strength. They were indeed powerful, yet there would eventually come a point where their energy was exhausted. However, there were 3 of them, so it was entirely possible for 2 of them to battle against Ling Han while the third stood aside to rest. In fact, they only needed a short moment. Heavenly venerates could forcefully extract the power of heaven and earth simply by opening their mouths and breathing. In just a few breaths, they could recover to their peak state. This was also the reason why Ling Han had been able to battle against Wu Haoyang for hundreds of thousands of years. Their recovery ability was far too quick. If this continued, they might never determine a victor. As the battle dragged on, the ancestral river heavenly venerate and the others became increasingly anxious. Right now, they were invading the Promised City realm, so elites like them couldn't leave the front lines for an extended period of time. Yet, 3 second-tier heavenly venerates had been caught up here, so the situation on the front lines was becoming increasingly dangerous. The Promised City realm was indeed weaker than the martial crystalline realm, but not by very much. Friend, what condition do you have to stop? The ancestral river heavenly venerate asked, finally yielding to his opponent. In his eyes, nothing was more important than defeating the Promised City realm. Give me Yang Jiha's head. Ling Han said. Impossible. To say nothing to Yang Jiha. Even the ancestral river heavenly venerate and the others couldn't agree to this. Second-tier heavenly venerates were the most powerful beings of the martial crystalline realm, so they definitely couldn't sacrifice one of them. Then the only option is to battle. Ling Han said coldly, You're taking things too far. The 3 heavenly venerates roared in fury. They all retrieved their heavenly venerate tools. Wang, wang, wang. 3 columns of brilliant light soared into the sky. These 3 heavenly venerate tools consisted of a sword, a broadsword, and a spear. With these heavenly venerate tools in hand, the battle prowess of the three heavenly venerates instantly soared. Ling Han didn't hold back, either, retrieving his divine demon sword, whose might astonished the 9 heavens. The 4 of them continued to do battle, with the 3 heavenly venerates already gaining an advantage. However, it was still impossible for them to suppress Ling Han. After battling for another 10 years, even Taiyan couldn't watch on any longer. He flew into the sky and said, "Ling Han, that's enough. Otherwise, I'll have to step in as well." They all shared a common goal, and that was to defeat the Promised City realm. When that dimension collapsed, they would then share the huge opportunity that presented itself. Ling Han also knew that he couldn't possibly kill Yang Jihe with so many heavenly venerates opposing him. In fact, his failure was guaranteed as soon as Yang Jihe decided to flee. It wasn't that easy to kill a second-tier heavenly venerate. He pondered for a moment before replying, "Fine, then tell Yang Jihe to apologize to my grandson. I'll temporarily forgive him after that." Gasp. Telling a paramount heavenly venerate to apologize to a mere celestial king, and only forgiving the former temporarily. Yang Jihe almost went wild with rage. So what if he decided to slaughter 10,000 ninth heaven celestial kings? Who dared to reprimand him? Now he had only attempted to kill a single celestial king, and he had more so failed at that. Yet Ling Han actually wanted him to apologize. Ling Han spread his hands and said, "Don't want to? Then let's keep fighting. I don't mind at all. Brother Yang." The ancestral river heavenly venerate and the others looked toward Yang Jihe and said, "Please understand the priorities." Since Ling Han had already taken a step back, it was now Yang Jihe's turn to concede. After all, they each needed to make a concession to resolve this problem now. The 4 knights heavenly venerate and Taiyan looked at him as well, and it was as if their expressions were saying, "If you don't agree, then we'll step in and help you agree." Yang Jihe naturally couldn't die. However, he also couldn't act on his own whim. No matter what, defeating the Promised City realm was still the most important task at hand. "Fine," Yang Jihe said, the veins on his forehead bulging. He had no option but to bow his head unless he wanted to have a falling out with the other heavenly venerates. Chapter 2750 2750 Ceasefire. Chapter 2750 2750 Ceasefire. 2750 Ceasefire. Yang Jihe had descended to the ground, stopping before Ling Fifan and saying, "I shouldn't have developed killing intent against you." Ling Fifan picked his ears and said, "Come again? That's an apology. I don't accept it." He waved his hand with a righteous expression. Ling Han had the upper hand now, so Ling Fifan naturally needed to take advantage of it. What a joke! Just because he was weaker, he deserved to be flattened and stomped on. He was also a person. And Xiu'er's eyes instantly glimmered with intoxication. This was the pride and domineering aura of her lover that she adored. "Keep posturing, why don't you?" everyone said in their minds. At the same time, they were also incredibly envious of Ling Fifan. To have a second-tier, heavenly venerate bow his head and apologize even, just as a formality, was still something that he could brag about forever. Ling Han stood beside Ling Fifan with a smile and said, "I also don't feel like that was an apology." "What? You think our Ling clan is easy to pick on?" A cold glint appeared in his eyes. He was still a pseudo-heavenly venerate, so when he became a true heavenly venerate, killing second-tier heavenly venerates would be as easy as a wave of his hand. Yang Jihe's heart jolted. He could indeed belittle Ling Han right now. However, the latter was only a pseudo-heavenly venerate at this moment. What would happen when he advanced? Even if all 7 of the second-tier heavenly venerates here teamed up, would they be powerful enough to stop Ling Han? There were only 2 ways to deal with such a freak: kill him before he became invincible, or genuinely bow one's head and resolve any animosity. With this in mind, he eventually heaved a sigh. "I was indeed in the wrong. I shouldn't have developed killing intent toward this young friend. Please accept my apology." As he said this, he retrieved a spatial god tool and handed it to Ling Fifan, saying, "Treat this as compensation. Hopefully it can soothe your anger." Not only was he apologizing, but he was even giving compensation. As a second-tier heavenly venerate, he was genuinely lowering his status as much as he could. Ling Fifan looked toward Ling Han. Upon seeing him nod, he accepted the spatial god tool with a smile and said, "Senior, you're truly being too generous. If you ever need me in the future, just give me a yell." "Of course. That's as long as you compensate me each time." He used his divine sense to observe the spatial god tool, finding that it was indeed filled with an astonishing amount of treasures. Yang Jiha was truly pissed off at this moment, as this was the betrothal gift that he had prepared for the clan. Thus, even with his wealth, he couldn't scrape together many such gifts. How many more times did Ling Fifan want to receive compensation? "Friend Ling and other friends, come on over and take a seat," and Taiyan said in invitation. After so many years, the reconstruction of the clan residence was naturally complete. Ling Han and the 4 second-tier heavenly venerates all entered the clan. Some of the first-tier heavenly venerates also walked over, wanting to listen to the conversation. After all, if the 5 super elites discussed cultivation, they might have the opportunity to comprehend something new. "Friend Ling, where are you from?" The 4 knights heavenly venerate couldn't help but ask this after taking a seat in the guest hall. Just what sort of place had raised such a freak? "The celestial realm," Ling Han replied with a smile. He didn't conceal the truth. Celestial realm. The heavenly venerates were all at a loss. They had never heard of this place before. Ling Han offered an explanation, telling them that the celestial realm was the youngest and most recently born dimension of the Genesis world at the very least. This would be true until a 2-realm passageway formed between the celestial realm and the dimension after it. "Super low-level dimension," the heavenly venerates exclaimed in shock. Such a realm could produce a freak, such as Ling Han. Was that truly a super low-level dimension? Ling Han recounted his experience of going to the transcendent dimension, and he described to them the atmosphere of that vast heaven and earth. At the same time, he also hung a grave threat over their heads. After hearing about the existence of hysteria, the heavenly venerates all wore grave expressions. They were racking their brains for ways to annihilate the Promised City realm so that they could use this opportunity to raise their cultivation. By the looks of things now, however, it was as if they were fighting with someone else on the edge of a volcanic crater. Regardless of who won, as long as the volcano erupted, they would both be disintegrated into dust. "I urge you to end this pointless battle and head to the Flaming Frost realm to fight against Hysteria's invasion. Otherwise, once Hysteria makes its way in, the entire world will be finished," Ling Han said. "Moreover, the Flaming Frost realm is a transcendent dimension, making it possible to reach the 7th tier. This is the destination that we should all strive toward." Everyone hesitated after hearing this. Conquering the Promised City realm had been their dream for generation after generation. Countless prodigies with unlimited potential had died for this cause, as had countless supreme elites. Now, however, they were being urged to end the battle just like that, and amicably join hands to face hysteria? How could they accept this? Ling Han chuckled and continued, "If I hadn't come across this, then that would have been it. However, since I've become aware of the internal battle going on here, it's my responsibility to step in. Only 2 options sit before you. End the battle, or I'll join the Promised City realm. With my support, do you think you can still defeat the Promised City realm?" Gasp! Everyone gasped upon hearing this, and they couldn't help but feel like Ling Han was being extremely unscrupulous. He was actually using this to threaten them. However, this was also extremely effective. Just then, even a team of 3 second-tier heavenly venerates had failed to suppress Ling Han. As such, him joining the Promised City realm might not necessarily turn the tables for them, but it would at least mitigate their disadvantage. The ancestral river Heavenly Venerate couldn't help but ask, "Friendling, this battle doesn't involve you, so why insist on becoming a foe?" Ling Han shook his head, saying, "You guys haven't been to the realm battlefield, so you don't understand the brutality of that place. Right now, the most critically important task is to resist Hysteria's invasion. Otherwise, how can a destroyed nest protect its eggs? What does it matter even if you become 3rd tier or 4th tier Heavenly Venerates? You'll still suffer the fate of being crushed into scraps." Everyone fell silent. However, no one questioned the veracity of Ling Han's words by thinking that he had made Hysteria up to frighten them. That would be far beneath him. "Allow us a moment to consider this," the Heavenly Venerate said. This matter was far too important, so none of them could make up their minds on a whim. The others all took their leave, while Ling Han remained with Taiyan to discuss the wedding between Ling Fifin and Enshoer. The two youths were already in love anyway, and now their backgrounds were more so well-matched in status. Thus, their marriage was naturally agreed upon very quickly. They weren't in a hurry to get married, as Ling Han needed to first go to the Promised City realm to bring Ling Jinxue and his wife over. Moreover, he still needed to end the war between the two dimensions. Ling Han set off with Ling Fifin, heading toward the two-realm passageway. His speed was now astonishing, so it only took him a few days to reach his destination. This place was very similar to the Celestial Realm, with an army encampment keeping guard and a large number of cultivators present to train themselves. Ling Fifin had traveled through many dimensions with his parents, so he had long since become accustomed to acclimatizing himself to the regulations of each world. Meanwhile, Ling Han didn't need to worry about this. He had created a power core for himself, so things would be the same for him no matter where he went. His strength came from within. Thus, when they arrived at the two-realm passageway, their battle prowess wasn't affected in the least. They entered the passageway without any difficulties, and it would be impossible for others to notice anything amiss about them. Thus, they naturally weren't stopped by anyone as they started to travel between the dimensions. After some effort, they passed the most chaotic area of the two-realm passageway and arrived at the Promised City realm. Here, they also didn't attract the attention of anyone. It was as if they were native to this world. Ling Fifin led the way, bringing Ling Han to the army encampment to look for Ling Jinxue and his wife. Ling Fifin!" the people in the encampment exclaimed in deep shock upon seeing Ling Fifin. After all, many of them had seen him being defeated and captured. How had he suddenly returned? Chapter 2751. 2751 Smeared. Chapter 2751. 2751 Smeared. 2751 Smeared. Ling Fifin, how did you come back? Exactly, weren't you captured? How did you come back? Everyone asked this in curiosity. Before Ling Fifin could even answer, he saw a young man pushing his way through the crowd and making his way over, saying, "Ling Fifin, did you surrender to the enemy? Is that why they released you back as a spy?" Upon hearing this, a wave of commotion spread through the crowd. Ling Fifin was infuriated, and he shouted, "Jiangyaran, don't you dare smear me!" "Ha! Your family isn't from our dimension, so it won't be a surprise if you guys surrender and betray us," the young man scoffed. This person was called Jiangyaran. As for why he was targeting Ling Fifin, the reason for this was simple. This was because a girl that he liked had extremely strong feelings for Ling Fifin. As a result, he always targeted Ling Fifin no matter the situation. This time, the opportunity was even better. As a measly First Heaven Celestial King, he had actually managed to escape alive after being captured and brought to a foreign dimension, and he hadn't suffered a single wound. He had fled back himself? Who would believe this? There was definitely something fishy about this. "You bastard!" Ling Fifin roared, unleashing his killing intent. This accusation was far too severe. This person was extremely underhanded, and if his smear truly stuck, then it wouldn't only be him who was punished. His parents would be dragged into the mess as well. What? You want to kill me to keep this a secret? Jiang Yiran said, sticking his neck forward. He wasn't afraid of Ling Fifan, as he was also a First Heaven celestial king. He was confident that no one at the same cultivation level could defeat him. Bastard, I'll pummel you to death. Ling Fifan roared as he charged forward and threw a punch at Jiang Yiran. Sure enough, you've been shamed enough to erupt in anger now that I've exposed you, Jiang Yiran said with a cold chuckle. He raised his hands to form a seal before his body and said, Hurry, ask the lords to come over. We need to thoroughly interrogate. Pooh! As he was speaking, Ling Fifan's fist also arrived. Ling Fifan's body had already been tempered by Ling Han, so he now possessed a powerful body art. Even if he couldn't compare to the Ling Han of yore, his power was still quite extraordinary. Under this punch, Jiang Yiran's arms were both brutally broken, and he was more so sent flying into the sky. Pum! He flew back, with a dozen or so people behind him acting as human cushions. Only after skidding back a huge distance did they finally grind to a halt. Jiang Yiran was absolutely stunned. Ling Fifan had only been gone for a few years, so how had he suddenly become so powerful? Look at this. Just look at this. You definitely surrendered to the enemy. Otherwise, how could you have become so powerful? He screamed. Channeling his source power, he slowly healed his arms. Are you truly seeking death? Ling Fifan asked in a baleful voice, with Ling Han standing beside him. He was naturally filled with confidence. It was also because of this that he didn't try to explain himself. Are you threatening me? Jiang Yiran said with a loud laugh. Even if you can shut me up, can you shut up the mouths of everyone in the world? He was intent on smearing Ling Fifan as much as he could. In any case, Ling Fifan's return was far too strange and suspicious to begin with, so it was extremely easy to sling mud and make it stick. Ling Fifan gave a soft shout as he lashed out again, launching another attack at Jiang Yiran. Pum! 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 In just a few strikes, Jiang Yiran already became as disheveled as could be. Before a combination of body art and regulations, how could he possibly resist? Ling Fifan, that's enough. Exactly. There's genuinely a lot you need to explain. The others couldn't watch on any longer, and they all stepped forward to stop Ling Fifan. Ling Fifan flew into a rage, and he shouted, He's been smearing me this entire time. So why did none of you step forward to stop him, huh? Everyone was rendered speechless. In their minds, however, they all mused that even though Jiang Yiran had taken things too far, his accusations had indeed been aligned with their own doubts. Who's causing trouble in the army camp? A voice that was filled with dignity and might said. They looked over, only to see an elegant man in white appearing, not a speck of dust on his clothes. Many females instantly gazed at him with respect and reverence. This man in white was called Shen Bo, and he was a ninth heaven celestial king. There were few heavenly venerates in this low-level dimension, so ninth heaven celestial kings could almost be regarded as the most powerful elites. Thus, he naturally made their hearts flutter. Jiang Yiran hurriedly clasped his hands and said, My respects to Lord Shen. Ling Fifan also stopped his attack, saying, Lord Shen. Shen Bo raised his hand slightly before looking at Ling Fifan in surprise and saying, You're back? What about the other prisoners? How would I know? Ling Fifan said in his mind. Because of his relationship with Enshoer, he had been directly brought to the Yin clan. Thus, he naturally didn't know about the other situation. He shook his head and replied, I don't know. Why don't you know? Shen Bo said in a stern voice, How did you escape? Ling Fifan suppressed his anger and said, Since I've already returned, I'll naturally explain everything in detail. However, my parents are still worried about me, so can you allow me to visit them first? If you've defected to the enemy, that's a most serious crime. So how can you still be allowed to visit anyone? Jiang Yiran interjected. Shinbo wore an expression of displeasure upon hearing this. He was currently speaking, so who had the right to cut him off? However, Jiang Yiran's words were his thoughts as well, so he simply glared at Jiang Yiran, but didn't reprimand him. The actions of I, Ling Fifan, will let down neither heaven and earth, nor my own conscience. Ling Fifan said loudly, by treating me like this, are you not afraid of bitterly disappointing me? If you're truly innocent, then what do you have to be afraid of? Shinbo said sternly, make haste and explain yourself. Fifan. Right at this moment, two voices sounded in unison, and a man and a woman immediately flew over. Ling Jinxue, Chun Shuang. Father, mother. Ling Fifan hurriedly called. After he was captured, they had definitely prepared for the worst. Now that they were reunited, they all felt like they had been apart for a lifetime. The three of them were just about to embrace, yet Shenbo immediately stopped them and said, you too, your son has very likely committed the crime of defecting to the enemy. So before we understand the situation fully, he needs to undergo interrogation first. Ling Jianxue was enraged upon hearing this. The small family of three had come here to fight for a foreign world, yet they were now being accused of defecting to the enemy. Because of his incandescent rage, Ling Jianxue failed to even notice Ling Han. In any case, Ling Han's hair was still disheveled and his face was still dirty, and had more so been over an epoch since they had last seen each other. Thus, how would he suspect that this person was his father? Shinbo, step aside, he said in a baleful voice. It was because he was a righteous person who couldn't stand to see a weaker person being bullied by a stronger person that he had decided to battle for the Promised City realm. In fact, he had stuck to this principle throughout his journey through the numerous dimensions. Now, however, his thankless sacrifice had earned him the accusation of his son being a traitorous defector. How could he accept this? Ling Jianxue, don't tell me you want to get physical with me. Shinbo said coldly. He was naturally unafraid. And what if we do? Chun Shuang said. She was hot-tempered, and she immediately lashed out at Shinbo. She had been accepted as a disciple of the Heavenly Saint Palace back then, so her talent naturally wasn't lacking. After cultivating for an epoch, she had also reached the 9th heaven, giving her the right to oppose Shinbo. Boom! The two elites became locked in an intense battle, and the surrounding crowd naturally had no option but to scamper. Otherwise, if they were accidentally hit by a wayward shockwave, they would truly suffer a miserable fate. Meanwhile, Ling Jianxue seized this opportunity to rush up to Ling Fifan, asking, Fifan, are you okay? Dad, I'm fine, Ling Fifan replied. Only at this moment did Ling Jianxue look toward Ling Han. A sense of familiarity involuntarily welled up in his heart, yet he was unable to immediately put his finger on the reason. Moreover, this was the Promised City realm, so how could he be familiar with anyone here? Chapter 2752. 2752 attacked on all sides. Chapter 2752. 2752 attacked on all sides. 2752 attacked on all sides. Ling Fifan was just about to reveal Ling Han's identity, yet he suddenly felt a tremendous force rush over, causing his chest to ache. This forced him to swallow his words. Brother Lei, Brother Qin, Brother Zhao. Ling Jianxue said with a serious expression. 3 9th heaven celestial kings had come in unison. I want to first congratulate Brother Ling on your son's safe return, Lei Bing said. However, over 3,000 others were captured with him. So why was he able to safely return by himself? This naturally requires an explanation. Ling Jianxue was boiling with anger, and he said, Our family of 3 has been fighting here for several million years, and the contributions that we've made have been clear for everyone to see. Have we not even earned the most basic trust? The human heart is a volatile beast. Who knows? Chen Wangyin said apathetically. He didn't give Ling Jinxue any help. So, please cooperate with us, Brother Ling. If we find no issues after questioning your son carefully, we'll be willing to apologize to Brother Ling and your missus, Zhao Beiwei said with a smile. This was asking for Ling Jinxue and his wife to surrender without putting up a fight. Ling Jinxue was even more enraged. Because of this one thing, the three of them were all going to be treated as criminals. Once they were captured, their life and death would fall into the hands of others. As a cultivator, how could he allow this to happen? Since you're all suspicious of us, this place is no longer suitable for us to remain, Ling Jinxue said with a sigh. Shuang Shuang, let's go. Whoosh! Qin Shuang Shuang immediately returned to Ling Jinshue's side. You want to leave? Shinbo said in a baleful voice. Perhaps you're feeling guilty. Shinbo, have some conscience when you speak. Ling Jinxue said in a deep and solemn voice. He was truly angered at this moment. Facing traitors, what respect do we need to show? Lei Bing said, Let's leave. Ling Jinxue said, Can you leave? Zhao Beiwei said, stepping forward and unleashing an attack at Ling Jinxue and his wife. As for Ling Fifan and Ling Han, they were naturally ignored. After all, one was only a first heaven celestial king, and the other more so, looked like a beggar. He didn't look like an elite no matter how they looked at him. Ling Jinxue faced the attack head-on. Pung, pung, pung. The two of them immediately launched into battle. Ling Han purposefully didn't interfere, as he wanted to observe his son's current strength. He immediately nodded in satisfaction. Ling Jinxue hadn't wasted his time roaming so many dimensions. He had continually recultivated using each dimension's unique regulations, and this had allowed him to form an extremely stable foundation. He was only a step away from advancing to the heavenly venerable tier. Initially, Ling Jinshue's talent wasn't enough for him to advance to the heavenly venerable tier. However, nothing in this world was a certainty, so through his perseverance and effort, he had ultimately transformed the impossible into possible. As expected of his son, Zhao Beiwei was no match for Ling Jinxue, and he immediately fell into a disadvantage after just a few exchanges. Upon seeing this, Lei Bing and Shen Bo both stepped forward to join the battle. With a soft shout, Chen Shuang Shuang also joined the battle, assisting her husband. Chen Wangyin was unwilling to be left out, so he also joined in, turning the battle into a 4-on-2. This dimension naturally had more ninth heaven celestial kings than just Lei Bing and the others. Thus, as the battle dragged on, more and more ninth heaven celestial kings appeared. However, none of them joined the battle. Most of them had a strong sense of pride and dignity, rendering them unwilling to join forces with others. Ling Han had intentions of training his son, so he also remained a spectator. Unless they faced perilous danger, he wouldn't step forward to help them. Ling Jinxue was truly an extraordinary cultivator. Even though he wasn't as freakish as Ling Han, and even though he didn't possess a body art, his foundations were truly far too stable. Thus, he was able to take on the 4 elites all by himself. Meanwhile, Qin Shuang Shuang acted like an assassin as she danced around them. The cooperation between husband and wife was extremely strong. They were 2 against 4, yet not only were they not at a disadvantage, but they were even showing signs of winning. However, 3 more ninth heaven celestial kings immediately stepped forward to oppose them, joining the ranks attacking Ling Jinxue and his wife. At this moment, Ling Jinxue and his wife immediately showed signs of cracking, falling to a disadvantage. Brother Ling, why struggle in futility? As long as you obediently come with us, we won't hurt the 3 of you. After all, we've seen your contributions with our own eyes, Lei Bing said. Ling Jianxue naturally wouldn't believe his words. Was he trying to trick a 3-year-old child? He finally understood the concept of outsiders necessarily have their ulterior motives. However, it wasn't him with ulterior motives, but rather that these people had never trusted him to begin with. To think that he had fought for them with such loyalty and vigor. "Break free," he said to Qin Shuangshang through his divine sense. If they attracted the attention of a pseudo-heavenly venerate or a first-tier or second-tier heavenly venerate, they would no longer have the opportunity to escape. Anyhow, they had a rare treasure on them that could help conceal their aura, so as long as they managed to lose their pursuers, even heavenly venerates wouldn't be able to find them. Qin Shuangshang nodded in agreement, and the two of them suddenly unleashed their trump cards, immediately breaking free from their opponents. It was incredibly difficult for celestial kings to kill fellow celestial kings, especially those at the same cultivation. Right at this moment, they heard a cold humph that slammed down at them like a heavy hammer. Ling Jinxue and Chen Shuangshang shuddered violently as they immediately crashed down from the sky. This was the action of a heavenly venerate, not a pseudo-heavenly venerate. Black clouds gathered overhead, with a gigantic face appearing in its center. Like the thunder god, this person's mouth stuck out, and their chin was like an ape's. "Our respects to Lord Vanishing Thunder!" everyone cried as they fell to their knees. The Vanishing Thunder Heavenly Venerate, a first-tier Heavenly Venerate. However, for people remained standing Ling Han and Ling Jianxue's family of 3. "Impudence! You dare to remain standing before me!" The Vanishing Thunder Heavenly Venerate said in displeasure. He was a newbie Heavenly Venerate, so he cared deeply about the rules and regulations of the cultivation world. This was especially the case when he saw those 9th heaven celestial kings who were previously at the same cultivation as him lowering their heads. This gave him a euphoric feeling. Ling Jianxue remained silent, his expression cold. There was one thing about him that was very similar to Ling Hanha, was also an extremely proud person. It was just that this pride was usually concealed under his warmth and friendliness. So what if I remained standing? Don't regard yourself too highly. After all, didn't you start off as a mere mortal as well? Ling Fifan suddenly said. Everyone was stunned upon hearing this. A measly celestial king actually dared to chide a heavenly venerate? Was he seeking death? The Vanishing Thunder Heavenly Venerate had already been extremely displeased to begin with, so upon seeing Ling Fifan dare to retort him, he instantly exploded with killing intent. He was indeed a prodigy, but there was no rule saying that prodigies needed to be generous and open-minded. He immediately lashed out. Boom! A large hand slammed down from the clouds, surrounded by a sea of blue lightning as it rushed toward Ling Fifan. Heavenly Venerates didn't need to have any reservations. If they saw something they didn't like, they could immediately lash out to crush it. Boom! The large hand landed, with even heaven and earth shuddering under its might. Ling Jianxue and Qin Shuangshang both despaired. They were being suppressed by the might of the Heavenly Venerate, so how could they possibly rush over to help their child? However, Ling Fifan remained fearless, and he remained glaring at the sky, refusing to bow his head. He was naturally filled with confidence. Ling Han had defeated even second-tier Heavenly Venerates, so what harm could a first-tier Heavenly Venerate cause? Pum! The large hand landed, yet it was blocked by another hand, rendering it unable to slam into the ground. Everyone's gaze was instantly drawn to Ling Han. This is a Heavenly Venerate from the martial crystalline realm, they immediately exclaimed. This dimension definitely didn't have such a Heavenly Venerate. Moreover, he had arrived together with Ling Fifan from the martial crystalline realm. So what else could he be but a Heavenly Venerate from that realm? The Vanishing Thunder Heavenly Venerate faltered upon seeing this. However, he immediately sneered and said, Even if you're a second-tier Heavenly Venerate, you'll still be nothing more than a first-tier Heavenly Venerate after arriving in this dimension. Taking into account the suppression from heaven and earth, you aren't necessarily powerful enough to rival me. Second tier heavenly venerates had definitely comprehended the unique power of a dimension and one of the fundamental powers of the Genesis world. However, after traveling to another dimension, they would no longer be able to wield the former power, the one cultivated during the first tier. Thus, after traveling to another dimension, second tier heavenly venerates could only be regarded as first tier heavenly venerates. Chapter 2753. 2753 Father and Son Reunited. Chapter 2753. 2753 Father and Son Reunited. 2753 Father and Son Reunited. First tier heavenly venerates were no match for second tier heavenly venerates. Not only did they have mastery of one fundamental power less, but they were also limited by the fact that the unique power of a dimension couldn't possibly surpass the fundamental powers of the Genesis world. However, after traveling to another dimension, the unique power of the dimensions would only remain in the heavenly venerate's body. Every bit consumed was every bit gone. This was similar to the situation faced by celestial kings. Thus, second tier heavenly venerates would quickly drop down to the first tier. Add to that the suppression of a foreign dimension, and it was entirely possible that foreign second tier heavenly venerates would become even weaker than indigenous first tier heavenly venerates. If this hadn't been the case, wouldn't it have been much easier for higher level dimensions to conquer lower level dimensions? Ling Han smiled faintly as he retracted his hand and said, "If you're not afraid of death, then come try me." The vanishing thunder heavenly venerate hesitated upon hearing this. He refused to believe that someone who could become a heavenly venerate was a fool. Thus, daring to come here alone, this person was definitely confident in his own abilities, or had some other source of confidence. Perhaps the martial crystalline realm was about to launch a large-scale attack, so they sent a heavenly venerate over to clear the path. He hurriedly sent a signal. No matter what, being careful was his top priority. "Who are you? Do you dare tell me your name?" The vanishing thunder heavenly venerate said solemnly. This was also the point of everyone else's curiosity. How could elites, especially heavenly venerable tier elites, appear out of thin air? Ling Jianxue had been staring at Ling Han the entire time, and at this moment his eyes suddenly lit up. His expression became as moved as could be. This was Ling Han. Ling Han! The vanishing thunder heavenly venerate repeated in confusion. He had never heard of such a person before. However, he immediately pushed this out of his mind and said, "Regardless of who you are, I suggest you stand aside." "Father!" Ling Jianxue exclaimed. He finally understood why his son was able to return it was because Ling Han had helped him. The vanishing thunder heavenly venerate immediately realized that he had misspoken. Just then, he had even told this person to stand aside. But his son was about to be killed, so how could he endure and not step forward? "So we truly didn't accuse you wrongly. You're genuinely spies from the martial crystalline realm," he said. If this hadn't been the case, why would Ling Han and Ling Fifan have returned from the martial crystalline realm? Ling Han made a pressing motion with his hand, causing an overwhelming power to surge into the surroundings. The pressure crushing down on Ling Jianxue and Chen Shuangshuang immediately disappeared, allowing them to stand back up. Ling Han shook his head and said, "You finally know that I'm your father, huh? Why were you always mucking around outside back then? Otherwise, he would have wanted to bring his son to the flaming frost realm." Ling Jianxue awkwardly ran his hand through his hair. "You guys!" The vanishing thunder heavenly venerate roared. They were taking things much too far. Were they treating him, a heavenly venerate, as nothing more than a prop? He lashed out in fury. Boom! Howling winds surged at Ling Han. Ling Han raised his hand and blocked all of these attacks. At the same time, He let Hellion Xuanxue exit the celestial guest residence so that she could reunite with their son. This reunion between mother and son was naturally filled with emotion, with tears brimming in Hellion Xuanxue's eyes. She had truly missed her son. Meanwhile, the Vanishing Thunder Heavenly Venerate continued to launch a flurry of furious attacks. After a dozen or so seconds, however, he stopped his attacks in astonishment. Ling Han was merely holding a single hand in the sky, yet he was able to easily block all of his attacks. Just how terrifying was his strength? Thoughts of retreat crept into his mind. At the very least, he couldn't face Ling Han by himself. What courage! You actually dared to charge over all by yourself, a voice said coldly. A figure appeared over the horizon, arriving in just a single stride. They stood in midair. This was a young-looking man, though there was a single silver horn on his head. He radiated with an astonishing aura. Everyone once again kneeled and said, "Our respects to Lord Mysterious Horn." This was naturally another Heavenly Venerate, the Mysterious Horn, Heavenly Venerate. He was also at the first tier. The Vanishing Thunder Heavenly Venerate instantly rediscovered his courage. After arriving here, a second-tier Heavenly Venerate from the martial crystalline realm would inevitably decline to the first tier. Thus, what did it matter even if Ling Han were slightly stronger than him? If the two of them teamed up, they would be more than powerful enough to deal with him. Very well, your family has finally reunited. So why don't you rest here for all eternity? He roared. Ling Han's gaze became cold. By the looks of it, you truly want to die. Enough with your arrogance. Right now, you're also nothing but a first-tier Heavenly Venerate. The Vanishing Thunder Heavenly Venerate said in disdain. Ling Han reached over to grab at the Vanishing Thunder Heavenly Venerate. Since you've come here, you have no option but to lay down even if you're a dragon. The Vanishing Thunder Heavenly Venerate roared as he charged forward without fear. Pum! The two of them exchanged a blow, and the Vanishing Thunder Heavenly Venerate's arrogant expression instantly underwent a drastic change as if he had seen a ghost. With a shudder, a plume of blood instantly exploded from his entire body like a fine mist. He was almost smacked to death. How was this possible? He was a first-tier Heavenly Venerate. Even if he were weaker than a second-tier Heavenly Venerate with the suppression of heaven and earth, this result should have been impossible. The Mysterious Horn Heavenly Venerate was also deeply stunned as he looked at Ling Han. He hurriedly unleashed a divine sense fluctuation to request more reinforcements. Ling Han ignored the Mysterious Horn Heavenly Venerate as he unleashed another palm strike at the Vanishing Thunder Heavenly Venerate. The Vanishing Thunder Heavenly Venerate gritted his teeth as he defended with all his might, also responding with an attack of his own. This was the Promised City realm. This was his home ground. Thus, as long as he could endure for a while, reinforcements would quickly arrive. However, Ling Han had already developed killing intent, so how could his opponent withstand these attacks so easily? Pum! A single palm strike was like an entire world collapsing, with a profound power bearing down on the Vanishing Thunder Heavenly Venerate and forcing him to sprawl over the ground. Under the watchful gazes of everyone, a paramount Heavenly Venerate was smacked into the ground with a single strike. What face did he still have? Ling Han's expression was cold as he said, "Is my son someone that you can humiliate?" Upon his arrival, the Vanishing Thunder Heavenly Venerate had immediately used his Heavenly Venerable Tier might to smash Ling Jianxue and Chen Shuangshuang into the ground. At that time, with training them in mind, Ling Han hadn't stepped forward to help them. However, this didn't mean that he would forget and forgive. One had to realize that his family was his bottom line. Whoever dared to harm them would die. The Vanishing Thunder Heavenly Venerate lay sprawled on the ground, unable to move even a single finger. The gulf between them was such that it seemed like a second-tier Heavenly Venerate was bullying a first-tier Heavenly Venerate. As the Vanishing Thunder Heavenly Venerate lay on the ground, He could see the peculiar gazes of everyone in the surroundings resting on him. This made him feel so humiliated that he wanted to die. He was a heavenly venerate, someone that even the heavens had to venerate. Just how paramount was his status? Before he could even finish this thought, he saw that Ling Han had already raised his foot and was about to stomp down on his head. The color drained from his face in terror. Lying sprawled on the ground was already embarrassing enough. So if he were further stomped with a foot, would he still have the face to see others in the future? "You dare!" the vanishing thunder heavenly venerate roared. "Pah!" Ling Han's foot stomped on his face, not missing the opportunity to twist around twice. Why wouldn't he dare? Ling Jinxue and Chen Shuangshuang were filled with emotion and gratitude. Ling Han was venting anger for them. Meanwhile, Ling Jinshue's blood boiled with excitement. He also wanted to possess boundless strength like Ling Han. If anyone dared to offend him, he would resolutely sentence them to death. He would deal with everything right there and then. "Friend, that's quite enough," a composed voice said. An elderly man with white hair walked over. He was tall and solidly built, with his face a healthy red and his white hair tied with a rope made from hemp. There was even a gourd hanging by his waist, making him exude an aura of age and antique. "Spiritual gourd, heavenly venerate," everyone said as they once again kneeled. In fact, even the mysterious horn, heavenly venerate, bowed slightly, saying, "Greetings to Lord Spiritual Gourd." This was a second tier, heavenly venerate. "Oh, he wanted to kill my son, so why should I release him?" Ling Han asked as he kept his foot on the vanishing thunder heavenly venerate's face. He didn't show any signs of wanting to lift his foot. "Because that's my command," the spiritual gourd heavenly venerate replied, a terrifying aura immediately erupting from his body. Boom! Like the tumultuous sea, this was a formidable aura that caused even the first tier, heavenly venerates, to shake. Chapter 2754. 2754 killed. Chapter 2754. 2,754 killed. 2,754 killed. The spiritual gourd heavenly venerate was very domineering. "I have said so. So that is the heaven, that is the earth, and that is the law." Ling Han smiled slightly. "Unfortunately, you are not yet qualified for that." He lowered his head and looked at the vanishing thunder heavenly venerate beneath his foot, asking, "Let me ask you, do you have any regrets?" In full public like this, even if the vanishing thunder heavenly venerate felt reservations, there was no way that he would show weakness. Immediately he raised his head high and declared, "Whatever I do, I feel no guilt towards heaven and earth. So what regrets would I have?" "Very good." Ling Han nodded and then raised his foot. Everyone thought that he would be letting him go, and gave in, mentally. After all, this was the Promised City realm. No matter how fierce the dragon passing through was, they would have to be wary of the local tyrant. Pah! But they had not even finished this thought when they saw Ling Han's foot had already descended, directly stomping the head of the vanishing thunder heavenly venerate into mush. Phut! 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 That was a heavenly venerate, and his head had actually been destroyed. Everyone watched with wide eyes, their faces filled with disbelief. However, heavenly venerates were too strong. Even if his mind had shattered, he had not died yet. Instead, a soul flew out, turning into a sphere of light. This light sphere was flickering with lightning, revealing the face of the vanishing thunder heavenly venerate. He glared harshly at Ling Han, his eyes filled with fury and venom. For heavenly venerates, the physical body was extremely important because they extracted the power to temper their physical bodies. Without the support of a physical body, the soul was a fish out of water and was incredibly weak. Of course, if he snatched another body for himself, it was not impossible for him to cultivate again to heavenly venerable tier, but that would definitely require an endless amount of time. "How dare you!" The spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate was enraged. Ling Han actually dared kill in front of him. Just what great and brazen insolence was this? What did he take him for? What would I not dare? Ling Han continued to move, grabbing out towards the vanishing thunder Heavenly Venerate. Since he had declared that he would kill him, there was no way he would give up halfway. The spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate naturally could not tolerate this. Immediately he charged out, wanting to rescue the vanishing thunder Heavenly Venerate. Allowing Ling Han to commit a crime once was already extremely embarrassing for him, so how could he allow Ling Han to commit another offense? Boom! The spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate delivered a palm strike towards Ling Han, his blow bearing an incomparably vast and powerful might. Ling Han was unafraid and met the incoming attack with a punch. The two great elites exchanged blows once, which instantly created a shock wave that seemed capable of destroying worlds. Pung, pung, pung. Everyone around them were involuntarily sent flying. The most unfortunate among them had to be the vanishing thunder Heavenly Venerate. Initially, he had naturally had no fear of a second-tier Heavenly Venerate level shockwave, but now he was only left with a soul, which was incredibly fragile. This was his fate. He hurriedly extracted the power of heaven and earth, forming a defensive barrier in front of him. Drawing on the power of heaven and earth was naturally no issue for him. Pum! He was too close to them, and his defense was actually shattered by this shock wave directly. As the aftermath surged, his soul was also ripped, and the pain could not be described. If it was not for the fact that he no longer had a physical body, he would definitely be throwing up copious amounts of blood by now. Why you? The spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate paled in great shock. He hurriedly retreated over 50 kilometers away, his eyes set on Ling Han, filled with astonishment and terror. That was because he had discovered that Ling Han had not drawn on the power of heaven and earth at all. There were 3 possibilities for this. Firstly, Ling Han was a first-tier Heavenly Venerate from another dimension, so there was naturally no way he could draw on the unique power of this dimension. Secondly, he was deliberately using only the power of his physical body. The chance of the third possibility being true was completely zero, but it was that Ling Han was only a pseudo-Heavenly Venerate, so there was naturally no way he could draw on the power of heaven and earth. But whatever was the case, his power should be incredibly weaker than that of the spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate. How could it be that the former fought him to a tie with a single strike? In fact, the former even seemed slightly superior in their clash. How could this be understood? Who exactly are you? The spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate asked. If the martial crystalline realm had had this kind of freak, what need would there have been for them to slowly progress with their invasion? They could completely unleash a full invasion. Quang! Right at this moment, a reaction came from the heaven and earth, striking madly at the spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate, and Ling Han, on the other hand, was completely fine. Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate. The spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate's mouth was wide, looking like he had seen a ghost. It was not that he had not considered this possibility, but the chance of this was close to zero in his mind. Wasn't it a joke for a pseudo-Heavenly Venerate to be capable of matching a second-tier Heavenly Venerate? Was there anything even more exaggerated than this in this world? But the heaven and earth had targeted him and ignored Ling Han completely, so wasn't this the best proof? Beneath them, a commotion had also risen among the crowd. How could they believe this? The vanishing thunder Heavenly Venerate was filled with even more disbelief. If it was true that his physical body had been destroyed by a pseudo-Heavenly Venerate, then wouldn't he become the greatest joke in all history? Ling Han did not answer. His figure moved, and he continued his charge towards the vanishing thunder Heavenly Venerate. He was going to establish his might. Stop! The spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate hurriedly pounced towards him. Whether it was for his own reputation or for the sake of the dimension, He naturally could not let Ling Han kill a heavenly venerate. Ling Han channeled the indestructible heaven scroll, ignoring the spiritual gourd heavenly venerate completely. He was hell-bent on attacking the vanishing thunder heavenly venerate. The spiritual gourd heavenly venerate tried all means to stop him, but his strength was not superior to Ling Han's in the first place, especially when mistakes would be made during an extensive period of defense. Even if he blocked 1,000, 10,000 blows from Ling Han, as long as even one blow made it through and landed, the vanishing thunder heavenly venerate would definitely be killed. The spiritual gourd heavenly venerate was very gloomy in this battle. He had never been so tired, and he felt as if he had power, but it could not be used the way he wanted. Even if he continuously saved the vanishing thunder heavenly venerate, the latter was still severely wounded, his soul being torn many times and endlessly became weaker. If things went on like this, it would not take too long before the vanishing thunder heavenly venerate would die. No. The spiritual gourd heavenly venerate's eyes turned, setting on Ling Jinxue and the others. Since you can attack the weaker person, I naturally can as well. They could just hold hostages over each other so that the other party would not hurt the hostage that they had captured. This thought flashed through his mind, and he immediately pounced towards Ling Jinxue and the others. Ling Han humphed. You wish to die as well. His figure turned and set off in pursuit of the spiritual gourd heavenly venerate. However, with a wave of his right hand, a cold light surged out, shooting towards the soul of the vanishing thunder heavenly venerate. The vanishing thunder heavenly venerate had just sighed in relief. He had not expected that Ling Han would actually strike a blow against him now, scaring him so much that he hurriedly drew on the power of heaven and earth to defend himself. This time, there was no spiritual gourd heavenly venerate to help him out of the crisis, so he had to do it himself. Pooh! Yet, the defensive shield formed from the power of heaven and earth was completely useless against this cold strike, and a sword was seen piercing towards him. A heavenly venerate tool. The vanishing thunder heavenly venerate exclaimed inwardly. He was a newly promoted heavenly venerate, and had not yet forged his own heavenly venerate tool. Otherwise, he would have used it long ago. He had just barely finished the thought when the stab from the divine demon sword reached him. The soul was extremely fragile in the first place, so how could it possibly withstand the sharpness of a heavenly venerate tool? His soul was immediately pierced through. Under the calamitous, destructive power of a heavenly venerate tool, the vanishing thunder heavenly venerate's soul was immediately destroyed. He released a wave of dimension power, which instantly spread throughout this entire dimension. The vanishing thunder heavenly venerate had died. There was no empathetic grief from the heaven and earth or any shower of blood. Heavenly venerates were not under the control of the heaven and earth. Rather, they were hated and envied by the heaven and earth, so there were naturally no unnatural phenomena to be seen. Ling Han had already come close. He threw a punch, and the 5 elements lightning technique channeled, blasting towards the back of the spiritual gourd heavenly venerate. The spiritual gourd heavenly venerate could not ignore this. If he was struck by Ling Han with a heavenly venerate technique, his physical body might immediately crumble, just like the vanishing thunder heavenly venerate. He turned around. Pung! He sent out a palm strike, parrying this punch from Ling Han. However, Ling Han's steps took an abrupt turn, and he immediately appeared in front of Ling Jinxue, Helian Xuanxue, and the others. With a wave of his hand, he instantly took all 4 of them into the celestial guest residence. Then he turned around and faced the spiritual gourd heavenly venerate. Chapter 2755. 2755 Arrival of Heavenly Venerates. Chapter 2755. 2755 Arrival of Heavenly Venerates. 2755 Arrival of Heavenly Venerates. Everyone was captivated and rendered completely speechless. Ling Han had killed the vanishing thunder Heavenly Venerate with a single strike and managed to withdraw to stop the spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate, saving Ling Jinxue and the others. Just how strong could this man be? You are good. Very good. The spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate set his eyes on Ling Han. He was really enraged now. Ling Han smiled slightly, and with a beckoning gesture of his hand, Xiu, the divine demon's sword automatically flew back to him. He said, I am actually a very nice guy. As long as no one touches my bottom line, I will not kill anyone. If someone wanted to kill Ling Han, he might only smile calmly in response and just say, come on then, I will kill you with a single punch. He would not deign to settle the matter in advance at all. However, if someone wanted to touch his family and friends, he would take the initiative to attack and destroy this hidden enemy with thunderous force, such as with the likes of the vanishing thunder Heavenly Venerate and Shinbo. Ling Han's eyes swept over these people, his gaze seeping with killing intent. He was going to kill all of these people. You still want to commit evil? The spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate asked menacingly. If I want to kill anyone, will you be able to stop me? Ling Han asked, smiling. The spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate was speechless. Previously, the vanishing thunder Heavenly Venerate had been a first-tier Heavenly Venerate, but he had still been slaughtered by Ling Han. Then, these remaining people were completely defenseless in front of Ling Han. How could he protect them? You will die! The spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate spat out word by word, and when he exclaimed the word die, the jade gourd tied in his hair suddenly fell. Whoa! Suddenly, endless brilliance burst out, and an aura that surpassed time and space spread out, causing suffocation. He also summoned his own Heavenly Venerate tool. He was going to become serious now. The jade gourd rose into the air and continuously grew in size. Furthermore, there seemed to be no end to it, as it covered the skies and hid the sun. Ling Han's hand gripped the divine demon sword, with him standing proudly. He had nothing to fear. Suppress! The spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate pointed at Ling Han. Whoa! The jade gourd immediately spurted out endless light, which turned into an ocean that rushed towards Ling Han. Do you think I fear you? Ling Han sneered. He moved with his sword in hand, charging towards the spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate. As the divine demon's sword struck, Ling Han sliced apart all that light, his sharp blade surging forwards. No matter how freakish you are, ultimately, you are only a pseudo-Heavenly Venerate. The spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate sneered. He stretched out both hands, grasping the power of heaven and earth, which turned into a long spear that stabbed towards Ling Han. Ding, 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 ding. Ling Han slashed out with his sword, splitting this long spear into countless shards. He forged onwards aggressively, not slowing down in the slightest. His battle prowess was not weaker than his opponent's at all, so how could he possibly be stopped? However, when he approached close enough, the spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate maneuvered his precious tool, and a shadowy light surged out of the gourd and turned into a divine waterfall, preventing Ling Han from continuing forwards. Boom! 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 The two great elites had even summoned their Heavenly Venerate tools, so this naturally was them going all out. They clashed continuously, and then the spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate's expression became uglier and uglier because he discovered that he was actually no match for Ling Han. The gap between them wasn't very large, but he was really outmatched. He was stunned. Was this really a pseudo-Heavenly Venerate he was fighting? This dimension was a low-level dimension. A second-tier Heavenly Venerate could not fight with his full power for an extended period of time. Otherwise, wouldn't he then be targeted by the heavenly tribulation? And how was this shown? A divine tribulation was just a small token. More importantly, the heaven and earth would cut them off from extracting the power of heaven and earth. If he could not extract the power of heaven and earth, a second-tier heavenly venerate could actually only be considered a pseudo-heavenly venerate. Second-tier pseudo-heavenly venerate. Thus, it was definite that the longer a heavenly venerate fought, the weaker he would become. Of course, this could be solved when they were in a high-level dimension, as the tolerance of the heaven and earth would be greater there. One party became weaker as the battle continued, while the other could maintain the same level without change. Was there any need to even wonder what the result would be? The spiritual gourd heavenly venerate was certain that if he wanted to defeat Ling Han, he could only do so with a single crushing, overwhelming blow. Otherwise, his disadvantage would only grow as the battle progressed, right until he himself was defeated. But the problem here was he was already the strongest elite of this dimension. Suppressing Ling Han could only be done by a third-tier heavenly venerate. Could a third-tier heavenly venerate be nurtured in a low-level dimension? Then there was another way to stand against Ling Han, and that was to depend on an advantage in numbers. Before they were targeted by the heaven and earth, they could stop and rest for a moment. That was doable as well. At present, it was only him alone, so these were just empty words. The spiritual gourd heavenly venerate hurriedly sent out a signal for help. He alone was really unable to stop Ling Han. For the moment, he could still manage to hold up. Ling Han could sense the wave of divine sense from his enemy, but was unconcerned. He was all alone. If he wanted to fight, he could, and if he wanted to flee, he could too. Furthermore, his power originated completely from himself, so he did not have the worries that other heavenly venerates would have. This battle was something that he had deliberately asked for. Otherwise, how would he be able to convince others with mere words? Previously, Taiyan and the others had listened to Ling Han. What other reason was there aside from the fact that he was strong enough? Otherwise, for a pseudo-heavenly venerate to converse as equals with a second-tier heavenly venerate had to be a joke. Ling Han tossed the spiritual gourd heavenly venerate off his tail. His strength was not enough to kill the latter for the moment, so he would first kill Shinbo and the others. The spiritual gourd heavenly venerate moved to stop him, but he was completely helpless. Those celestial kings that had attacked Ling Jinxue previously were all slaughtered as Ling Han began a massacre. When he had killed the majority of them, some heavenly venerates finally arrived. There were second-tier heavenly venerates and first-tier heavenly venerates, and there were also a few pseudo-heavenly venerates, making them a total of 9 people. When they saw how the second-tier heavenly venerate was battling intensely with Ling Han, 2 second-tier heavenly venerates immediately released a battle cry and joined the battle. All elites of the martial crystalline realm were to be killed without mercy. But when they actually fought, they were immediately stunned because Ling Han was overwhelmingly strong. He did not seem like a second-tier heavenly venerate that had come from the other realm at all. This freak is only a pseudo-heavenly venerate, but his battle prowess is too extraordinary, the spiritual gourd heavenly venerate explained. What? The other 2 second-tier heavenly venerates could not believe this at all. A mere pseudo-heavenly venerate could really be so strong. But then they recalled the minor details. They were being targeted by the heaven and earth, while Ling Han was completely ignored. Furthermore, Ling Han had not drawn on the power of heaven and earth. If it was said that this was because he regarded them with disdain and deliberately abstained from using it, this would seem even more impossible, right? Because he was a pseudo-heavenly venerate. How can a pseudo-heavenly venerate be so strong? At the same time that they felt stunned, an endless greed also rose up in them. If they could capture Ling Han and force out the secret to his strength, then wouldn't they, too, be able to become even more powerful? "Take him down!" the spiritual gourd heavenly venerate exclaimed. Now that there were 3 great heavenly venerates attacking Ling Han together, they were naturally certain of their victory. Agreed. The other 2 great heavenly venerates nodded. Though Ling Han was inconceivably strong, he had not exceeded their limits. The four of them fought fiercely and incredibly intensely. With the combined efforts of three great heavenly venerates, they could solve the problem of weariness. They only had to battle for a while and then take a rest on the sidelines, and they would be able to evade the problem of being targeted by the heaven and earth, immediately being revitalized. Ling Han frowned slightly. How long was the battle going to drag out if things continued in this way? With a thought, he turned around and left. You have no escape. The spiritual, gored heavenly venerate and the others hurriedly set off in pursuit. Ling Han led them into the depths of the two-realm battlefield, which belonged neither to the martial crystalline realm nor to the promised city realm, but rather could be considered an independent space. When the opportunity came for it, it would truly become a small world of its own, just like when the small world and the foreign realm collided and possess a realm core. After reaching this place, Ling Han no longer fled. Instead, he turned around and confronted them directly. The spiritual gourd and the others dared not be careless, either. This was no longer the promised city realm, where there was the power of heaven and earth to suppress cultivators from another realm. It was possible that elites from the martial crystalline realm could appear at any time. If they were besieged, they could die here. Ling Han released a battle cry, striking madly with the divine demon sword. Pung, pung, pung. They fought intensely again, but the spiritual gourd and the others soon encountered a problem. They could not extract the power of heaven and earth here. Chapter 2756. 2756 Killing a Second-Tier Heavenly Venerate. Chapter 2756. 2756 Killing a Second-Tier Heavenly Venerate. 2756 Killing a Second-Tier Heavenly Venerate. The reason why heavenly venerates were so strong was because they could extract the power of heaven and earth for their own use. But the power of heaven and earth could not be extracted here. So heavenly venerates would not be that much more powerful than a pseudo-heavenly venerate. All of us cannot extract the power of heaven and earth. So let's just see who is stronger. Ling Han laughed loudly, unleashing an aggressive counterattack. He had formed his own core of heaven and earth, and he himself could be considered a core of heaven and earth at the same time. His power was unending, so why would he be afraid of a drawn-out battle? The spiritual gourd heavenly venerate and the others knew that it would be disadvantageous for them to fight here, but they coveted the secret to Ling Han's strength, so they were reluctant to just retreat like this. They still continued to attack Ling Han endlessly, but as their power continued to decline, the three of them became more and more agitated. If things continued like this, to say nothing of being unable to deal with Ling Han, it would be they that would be suppressed by Ling Han instead. They hoped for a miracle to happen, that Ling Han's power would suddenly fall drastically, because they did not believe that there was anyone that could be this freakish, possessing endless power. However, a miracle did not happen, and their power was very realistically declining. Retreat! The three great heavenly venerates had no choice but to retreat. Otherwise, their battle prowess would fall below the second-tier heavenly venerate. By then, how could they possibly be a match for Ling Han? Wanting to flee now, how could it be as easy as that? Ling Han humphed coldly, chasing rapidly after the spiritual, gourd heavenly venerate. How dare you! The three great heavenly venerates moved simultaneously, rushing towards Ling Han. This time, Ling Han was also going all out. Channeling the indestructible heaven scroll, he completely ignored the other two great heavenly venerates and merely focused his aggressive attacks on the spiritual gourd heavenly venerate, not allowing the latter to have a chance of fleeing back to the promised city realm. Pung! 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 The battle prowess of a second-tier heavenly venerate was truly violent and fierce. One after another, attacks landed on Ling Han, and the latter felt his chest burn terribly, feeling incredible pain. But he still ignored them and just simply blasted the spiritual gourd heavenly venerate. He was determined to detain this man. If he wanted to have the Promised City realm listen to him, he had to establish his might first so that the people here would all calm down and listen to him. A second-tier Heavenly Venerate was an acceptable choice. What more when the spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate had actually wanted to make a move on Ling Jinxue and the others previously. If time was slightly rewound, and the spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate was still in his strongest state, it naturally would be a piece of cake for him to escape. However, because of greed, the three of them had to fight until their power declined enough before they were willing to retreat. Then, with Ling Han blasting him at full power, how would he manage to flee? He would only become weaker and weaker, so how could he possibly match Ling Han? The other two great second-tier Heavenly Venerates had also gone mad. With three Heavenly Venerates fighting at the same time, Ling Han was still able to capture or kill one of them. So how would they have the face to see others in future? The two of them blasted Ling Han continuously, determined to rescue the spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate. Pooh! Ling Han spat out blood, but the spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate was similarly throwing up blood. His situation was not very good, either. The situation now was very delicate. If the spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate could last for a while longer, then it was possible that he could drag out the battle so that Ling Han would be blasted into a state of severe injury, which would naturally resolve the crisis for him. But if Ling Han could last longer than the spiritual gourd, the one who would be collapsing would instead be the latter. Of course, which of those capable of becoming a Heavenly Venerate did not have a strong determination? Whether it was Ling Han or the spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate, both of them were extremely stubborn. No matter how critical the situation was, they would not lose their fighting spirit either. In this aspect, the spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate was not inferior to Ling Han in the slightest. But the problem here was that the spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate's battle prowess was still continuously declining, while Ling Han's battle prowess was not. This made Ling Han's advantage gradually stand out. Each strike landed on the spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate, causing him to quickly collapse. "You dared make a move on those close to me, die," Ling Han declared coldly. With a strike, Piyu, the spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate's head was suddenly pierced through. No, the other two great second-tier Heavenly Venerates exclaimed in shock. In the first place, they were at a disadvantage in the realm war, and now the situation would naturally become even worse with another second-tier Heavenly Venerate killed. Ling Han ignored them completely, stowed the body of the spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate into his spatial god tool, and then turned and left. The other two great Heavenly Venerates only chased a few steps and then stopped. While Ling Han had sustained severe injury, he could still fight, but if they pursued him into the martial crystalline realm, that would only be committing suicide. They sighed, shook their heads, and returned. With a second-tier Heavenly Venerate dead, the war would become even tenser. Ling Han did not return immediately to the martial crystalline realm, but rather recuperated from his injuries here. Otherwise, there was no guarantee that Yang Jihe and the others would not turn the tables on him and attack. It was best to be careful. His injuries were very serious. After all, he had killed the spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate while bearing the attacks of two great Heavenly Venerates forcefully. I am a pseudo-Heavenly Venerate, after all. This is where my limit is, Ling Han commented inwardly. However, the fact that he was able to kill one of them, even when he was being besieged by three great second-tier Heavenly Venerates, definitely was a battle merit unprecedented in all of history. I have basically walked this path up to this point. Ling Han was very satisfied with himself. Next, he would only have to return to the Flaming Frost realm and master the unique power there, and then he would break through to the Heavenly Venerable tier. 7 years later, he had finally completely recovered from his injuries and returned to the martial crystalline realm. "Friendling, was your journey smooth?" And Taiyan personally came out to receive him. Ling Han smiled, sent out all the people in the celestial guest residence, and then replied, "Not too bad. I encountered some minor problems, but they are dealt with." "Oh, what problems?" and Taiyan asked. Ling Han waved his hand, and two new bodies instantly appeared on the ground. A fearful aura surged out, and the twin brothers standing behind, and Taiyan instantly paled, trembling uncontrollably. Thankfully, and Taiyan had already unleashed his own aura, protecting his two sons. And Ping Tian and Ping Hai were both astounded. Just what level of elite were these two corpses? How could they have such powerful auras even after death? And Taiyan's eyes swept over them. He saw the vanishing Thunder Heavenly Venerate first, and was only slightly shocked. He knew that this was a newly advanced Heavenly Venerate. However, when he saw the spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate, his eyes bulged. This was his old foe, who knew how many times the two of them had fought. Their strength was more or less equal. If he entered into the Promised City realm, he would definitely be slaughtered by the other party, and it was the same the other way round. Yet Ling Han had entered into the Promised City realm, and not only had he not died, he had even aggressively killed two Heavenly Venerates. Just how terrifying was this? "Brother Ling, I am truly impressed." He sighed. Originally, he had addressed Ling Han as Friend Ling Han, and addressed himself respectfully. Though he recognized Ling Han's strength, he still had the pride of a second-tier Heavenly Venerate. However, now that the spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate, whose strength was equal to his, had been killed by Ling Han, what else was there for him to be proud of? Ling Han smiled. Now that the parents from both sides have arrived, it should be about time to prepare for the wedding rite. Agreed, and Taiyan agreed readily. For two great Heavenly Venerates to ally by marriage was naturally a big deal. When they heard the news, not only did celestial kings all arrive to attend the feast, even Heavenly Venerates were no exceptions. Initially, second-tier Heavenly Venerates had not wanted to arrive personally because of their lofty status. But when they heard of Ling Han's battle merit, and how even a second-tier Heavenly Venerate had been slaughtered by his hand, not one of them could sit by calmly, and all appeared personally. The wedding progressed. The new couple would naturally be teased excessively, while Ling Han and Taiyan, Yang Jiha, and the four knights Heavenly Venerate discussed matters behind closed doors. After allowing them such a long period of consideration, it was naturally time to hear the replies from these people. If Ling Han had not killed the spiritual gourd Heavenly Venerate, the people here would only have shaken their heads. How could they be willing to give up the great matter that they had planned for several dozen epochs? But now they were all nodding with agreement. Chapter 2757. 2757 son and grandson were beaten. Chapter 2757. 2757 son and grandson were beaten. 2757 son and grandson were beaten. Circumstances prevail over men. Ling Han could kill a second-tier Heavenly Venerate in another dimension. Such strength was too terrifying. So, it would be better to follow Ling Han to the Flaming Frost Realm. They were able to cultivate to the maximum limit in the low-level dimension, so they might not necessarily reach the 7th tier in a transcendent dimension. But there shouldn't be a problem with the 3rd tier and 4th tier. Therefore, they conversed with each other very happily. After the wedding ceremony, Ling Han set off together with Taiyan and the other 2nd tier Heavenly Venerates to the 2-realm battlefield. The presence of so many Heavenly Venerates naturally alarmed the Promised City realm. In the first place, there were already 1 2nd-tier Heavenly Venerate less, so they could only rely on the power of the dimension to suppress them. However, when they heard that Taiyan and the others took the initiative to say that they wanted to make peace, they were all surprised. This first reaction, naturally, was that this had to be fake. It was too fake. Their realm really couldn't last any longer, and its destruction was only a matter of time. Now this was nothing more than delivering a huge gift. Why was this so? Ling Han related the matter regarding hysteria and invited these heavenly venerates to go to the Flaming Frost realm with him. He was very blunt and directly said that if they didn't accept, then he would join forces with the elites of martial crystalline realm to flatten the Promised City realm. This threat indeed carried weight. After all, the spiritual gourd heavenly venerate was killed by Ling Han. After thinking through the matter for a few days, the Promised City realm agreed to Ling Han's proposal. The two realms ceased fighting and went to the Flaming Frost realm together. Ling Han led the way, and everyone set off. Everyone was bringing their families with them. This Flaming Frost realm was a transcendent dimension with endless opportunities, so it was naturally a place suitable for the growth of juniors. With a group of people transmigrating through the dimensions, and due to the presence of so many heavenly venerates, it naturally aroused the vigilance of every dimension. Although most of the elites in these medium-level dimensions had gone to Flaming Frost realm, there would always be one or two top-notch elites who stayed behind to keep watch. Ling Han stepped forward to speak, explaining that they didn't have any malicious intentions. They were just passing through to go to the Flaming Frost realm. They passed through smoothly and transmigrated from one dimension to another. At the same time, Ling Han was paying attention to the mark that he had inscribed to see if there was any response from the Empress. Although the Empress was also a super genius, there was still a gap when compared to him, especially in terms of comprehending the power of the dimension. Due to the exponential increase in difficulty, the gap in the time it would take for them to master the power of the dimension might be 100-fold or even 10,000-fold, respectively. Therefore, counting from the Flaming Frost realm, in the 99th dimension, Ling Han finally discovered the imprint of the Empress' divine sense. He proceeded to the core of that dimension, and sure enough, he met the Empress there. The Empress was waiting for him. She had reached her own limits in cultivation and couldn't accommodate any more power of the dimension. When the two met, they hugged each other excitedly. An epoch was really too long. After deliberately stopping over for a few days, Ling Han finally rejoined everyone, and they set off once again. The battle prowess of the Empress was also very strong. She would be able to completely defeat any first-tier heavenly venerate. However, she could not be compared with a second-tier heavenly venerate. After all, the power of the dimension which she had mastered was far inferior to that of Ling Han. This was good enough. Obviously, she was only a pseudo-heavenly venerate, but was capable of reigning invincible amongst first-tier heavenly venerates. Everyone set off again, and after hundreds of thousands of years, they finally arrived at the Flaming Frost realm. This is a great place. As soon as they arrived, all the heavenly venerates were deeply moved. The regulations here were more refined and advanced. After reaching the 9th heaven here, the chances of advancing a step further to become a pseudo-heavenly venerate would be much higher. Moreover, the level of heaven and earth here was the highest in the Genesis world. As long as there was a good opportunity and one's talent was good enough, they could become 3rd tier, 4th tier, or even 7th tier heavenly venerates. Of course, this was only a theoretical possibility. They were all secretly happy for their decision. It was right for them to come here. The group soon arrived at the world's paramount martial academy. Most of the heavenly venerates had to arrange for their descendants and successors to enroll into the martial academy before they could be at ease to proceed to the realm battlefield. Many people were actually not qualified to enter the martial academy, but it didn't matter, as the heavenly venerates could lead them through the 9 deaths formation. It was just that they couldn't think of entering and exiting by themselves in the future. There were many such people in the martial academy, such as Zhuo Kai and so forth. He was acting arrogant in the martial academy just because he had a pseudo-heavenly venerate for a father. With so many heavenly venerates arriving all at once, the martial academy suddenly became lively. Fortunately, the one keeping watch in the martial academy was a 3rd tier heavenly venerate who was capable enough to suppress all these heavenly venerates who would dare to mess around. Ling Han didn't bring Ling Jianxue, Ling Fifan, and the others into the martial academy, but intended to let them enter the 9 Deaths formation by themselves. Otherwise, so what if they entered the martial academy? Were they there to become profligate young masters? Of course, he had full confidence in his son and grandson, and believed that they would be able to pass the test. True enough, Ling Jianxue and Ling Fifan did not fall short of his expectations. They easily broke through the 9 Deaths formation. Even Chen Shuangshuang could only barely pass through, while Xiao lacked aptitude and could only rely on Ling Fifan. The furor caused by the arrival of the heavenly venerates subsided quickly. Not long after, they set off to the realm battlefield, which was an obligation that they needed to fulfill. Ling Han didn't go, as he and the Empress were about to break through to the heavenly venerable tier. Bewitching maiden Ro came back from outside, and smilingly said to Ling Han, "Husband, do you know that most people now think you are dead? How is it that I am now dead?" Ling Han asked, "There hasn't been any news about you for more than an epoch. Everyone was saying that you had failed in attempting to break through to the heavenly venerable tier and became a dead person of the past," Bewitching Maiden Rose said as she pursed her lips and smiled. Ling Han was stunned for a moment, only to realize that he hadn't made an appearance for an epoch, so it was normal to be suspected of being dead. With his freakishness, he should have reached the height of 3rd tier or even 4th tier heavenly venerate within hundreds of millions of years, but there had been no news in an epoch, so what else would it be if not him being dead? Ling Han couldn't help feeling curious. What had become of Ji Wuming, Hu Farong, and the others? They ought to have already become heavenly venerates. It was just unknown what heights they had reached at this point. He simply inquired and found out that Ji Wuming and Hu Farong had already left the martial academy a long time ago and gone to the realm battlefield. Not only them, but also Yi and Xianlu and the other prodigies from the celestial realm had gone there. After an epoch had passed, they had all reached the 9th heaven and were now fighting bloody battles in the realm battlefield in search of opportunities for a breakthrough. As for what happened to them now, Ling Han had no idea. After all, the realm battlefield was too far away, and there were so many prodigies. Even if many of those people had been dead for countless years, no one would know. It would be better to go to the realm battlefield in the future. Ling Han decided to set off with the Empress to find the core of this dimension so as to complete their last step as pseudo-heavenly venerate. However, the two of them hadn't yet set off for the journey when Chen Shuangshuang came looking for them. "What's wrong?" Ling Han asked. His daughter-in-law looked worried, as if she had encountered a huge problem. "Did Jianxue bully you?" he asked with a smile. Chun Shuangshuang shook her head, but couldn't help shedding tears. "Both Jianxue and Fifan are injured." Ling Han immediately stood up. Well, he was still here, yet someone dared to bully his son and grandson. He ignored the matter of revenge for the time being, and hurried to the place where both father and son were staying together with Chen Shuangshuang. True enough, both of them were lying down with injuries all over their bodies. Ling Han observed first, and let out a sigh of relief when he found that while the two of them were seriously injured, their lives were not in danger. Both of them had the alchemical pills that he had concocted, and upon consuming them in time, not only would their lives be fine, it would also not have any negative impact on their future advancement in cultivation levels. He breathed a sigh of relief before asking, "What happened?" Chapter 2758, 2758, Settling of Accounts. Chapter 2758, 2758, Settling of Accounts. 2758, Settling of Accounts. Here was the thing. Ling Fifan was a person with a flamboyant personality. He wasn't as suave and steady as Ling Jianxue. He was more like Ling Han, with his abilities being displayed to the full extent, and was more likely to cause trouble. As a matter of fact, he had gotten into a fight with another First Heaven Celestial King because of a trivial matter. The two fought, and the other party lost. In the end, that person turned out to be the younger brother of a ninth heaven celestial king, which directly provoked this elite to make a move against him. In the first place, how could a fight with a first heaven celestial king draw out an elite of the ninth heaven? This responsibility had to be borne by Ling Han. The reason was that this ninth heaven celestial king was called Yu Wudi. The Yu clan and Ling Han were old enemies, so when Yu Wudi heard that this person was surnamed Ling, he couldn't help but beat up Ling Fifan without so much as an explanation. It stood to reason that it was strictly prohibited for celestial kings of higher cultivation level to make a move against those at a lower cultivation level within the martial academy, unless the gap was within 2 cultivation levels. Yu Wudi dared to do this because his father, the Imperial Void Celestial King, had not only become a heavenly venerate, but had also advanced to become a second-tier heavenly venerate. The Imperial Void Celestial King had already been near to becoming a heavenly venerate in the celestial realm back then, so all he had needed had been more time or perhaps a little chance. After coming to the Flaming Frost realm, the cultivation environment here was sufficiently conducive, and in addition to that, he had had the time frame of an epoch that had allowed him to take such a step forward. He was extraordinary indeed, and after so many years, he had successfully taken the next step to become a second-tier heavenly venerate. Having his father who had successfully become a heavenly venerate, Yu Wudi was certainly able to be arrogant. He had not attained a perfect celestial seed, in fact. This was just a scam, and the chance of him becoming a heavenly venerate was extremely slim, so he wanted to become a ruler, acting as an overlord in this place. Just because Ling Fifan was surnamed Ling, Yu Wudi attacked and seriously wounded Ling Fifan, for no other reason than him being unhappy with the surname, though he was actually hitting the right person. When Ling Jinxue found out about it, he went to find Yu Wudi to talk some sense into him, but a fight broke out between them as well. Ling Jinxue wasn't weaker than Yu Wudi. Unfortunately, Yu Wudi had been operating here for many years, and he had many friends who were of ninth heaven. When these people attacked together, Ling Jinxue was naturally defeated and was also seriously wounded. It was just that simple. Ling Han's expression darkened. Did Yu Wudi think Ling Han was dead, daring to bully his son and grandson like this? Furthermore, this was Yu Wudi not having known the father and son relationship between Ling Han and Ling Jinxue. Otherwise, he might not have just dealt a heavy blow, but a deadly one. Oh, Ling Han hadn't killed anyone in an epoch, so everyone had forgotten about his existence, right? Fine then, he would go kill someone. Ling Han said to Chen Shuangshuang, "Take care of the two of them. I'm going to kill someone." Chen Shuangshuang couldn't help but feel moved. She never knew that she would have the urge to shed tears when she heard the words, "kill someone." This was the Martial Academy, after all, with strict rules and regulations, which were set by the heavenly venerates. Ling Han, on the other hand, did not hesitate to kill. This was a father's expression of anger and love. The Martial Academy was a huge place, but to Ling Han, it was actually very small. He took one step after another for 30 minutes, and he swiftly arrived at the peak of the mountain where the abode of Yu Wudi was located. If the Martial Academy had promptly come forward to severely punish Yu Wudi after Ling Fifan had been beaten, and the matter had been handled fairly, then Ling Han would not have had to break the rules. However, there was still no movement from the Martial Academy up until now, so Ling Han was outraged. Since the Martial Academy took no heed of the matter, then this father couldn't be blamed for taking action himself. Ling Han ascended the mountain step by step, and soon arrived on the peak of the mountain. There were guards in front of the abode, and one immediately shouted at Ling Han, "Who are you?" He was a third heaven celestial king, so it was naturally impossible for Ling Han to have any regard for him. However, Ling Han didn't make a habit of killing innocent people indiscriminately, so he said, "Call Yu Wudi out, I want to settle accounts with him." "How dare you?" the third heaven celestial king immediately reprimanded. Ling Han shook his head as he sent out a palm strike and pressed forward. His palm strike appeared light as a feather, as if there wasn't any force behind it. So the third Heaven Celestial King was also unafraid and countered Ling Han with a punch. Pung! He was sent flying as soon as the palm strike made contact, and all the bones in his body were shattered. However, Ling Han was merciful after all, and didn't smash him to death. The power of the strike didn't just stop there, as it blasted the mountain peak with a loud noise, and Yu Wudi's abode was instantly flattened. Xiao! A figure flew out and stood upright in the sky. It was precisely Yu Wudi, with his black hair fluttering in the winds. He bore an extremely angry expression. Someone actually dared to bombard his abode. Wasn't that too outrageously bold of a move? "Who are you?" he shouted at Ling Han. Ling Han shook his head. "So you don't recognize me?" Yu Wudi stared at Ling Han, and felt that Ling Han looked somewhat familiar, but he couldn't remember who he was for a short while. After all, Ling Han had been cultivating hard for the last epoch, which had greatly changed his demeanor and temperament. In addition to that, Yu Wudi thought that Ling Han was dead, so how could he have considered this person to be Ling Han? However, he bore a deep hatred for Ling Han after all. After a few more glances, he couldn't help but gasp and clenched his teeth as he exclaimed, "Ling Han, you recognize me now?" Ling Han said lightly, "You actually didn't die." Yu Wudi said bitterly. Back then, Yu Wudi had been defeated by Ling Han and had to break through to the Celestial King tier ahead of time. Then, after coming to the world's paramount martial academy, Ling Han had created one legend after another, which Yu Wudi could only look up to. It was originally thought that, having made no appearance in one epoch, Ling Han had already died in the process of advancing to the heavenly venerable tier, but he unexpectedly reappeared. Ling Han nodded. "Of the two people whom you injured today, one is my son, and the other is my grandson. So I came here to settle accounts with you." Yu Wudi was taken aback for a moment, and then sneered. "If I had known earlier, I should have dealt more severe blows." He was very pleased. He had failed to gain the upper hand over Ling Han, but he'd managed to get rid of his enemy's offspring. That was awesome. Too awesome. He looked at Ling Han, with the corners of his mouth lifted slightly. "Now that they've been beaten, what can you do?" "Kill you," Ling Han said in a very calm tone. "Ha! This is the Martial Academy. Do you dare to make a move?" Yu Wudi was not afraid in the least. Ling Han stopped talking, moved his feet, and walked towards Yu Wudi. "You dare!" Yu Wudi made a move, and boom, he grabbed a streak of great Tao and lashed with it towards Ling Han. Pung! The great Tao hit Ling Han's body, but there was not even the slightest impact. Ling Han stretched out his hand, grabbed Yu Wudi's neck, and lifted him up like a chicken. It was an extremely simple move. Yu Wudi was struggling and moving his limbs about as his face was filled with horror. How could he be so vulnerable in front of Ling Han? Back when Yu Wudi had been on the celestial path, he at least had been able to fight evenly against Ling Han, albeit he had been at a slight disadvantage. As for now, the two of them were not even on the same level at all. "You wouldn't dare to kill me." Yu Wudi's face was already flushed, but he was still acting stubborn because he knew that this was the Martial Academy, after all, and Ling Han wouldn't dare to kill him. Naturally, this made him fearless. "Take me to find those people who attacked together with you," Ling Han said calmly. Yu Wudi was the main culprit, so there was no doubt he ought to die, but the other people who had wounded his son also couldn't be let off the hook. They had to be severely punished. Dream on. Yu Wudi glared at Ling Han. Ling Han merely clenched his fist, and a terrifying power surged through. Ka, ka, ka. The sound of Yu Wudi's bones breaking could be heard instantly. I'll take you there, Yu Wudi conceded. Chapter 2759. 2759 Great Fury. Chapter 2759. 2759 Great Fury. 2759 Great Fury. Yu Wuti agreed to take Ling Han to find his friends, not just because he could not bear with such torment, but because he wanted Ling Han to walk out so that others could see him. This naturally would alert the authorities of the Martial Academy, and they would send someone to save him. He was certain that Ling Han had to have reached the pseudo-heavenly venerable tier, or even further than that, and that was why he could take him down with a single blow. Fuck, a heavenly venerate was being a bully, so the Martial Academy would definitely interfere in this matter. Very soon, they arrived at the foot of a mountain. This was where one of Yu Wuti's friends lived. That man's name was Cheng Feiwen, and he was also a ninth heaven celestial king, but he did not have a heavenly venerable tier elite among his ancestors. This small clique was led by Yu Wuti because only his father was a heavenly venerate and a second tier heavenly venerate at that. Ling Han took out a piece of divine metal, which he directly refined into a chain, and then tied Yu Wuti up with it. He then dragged him up the mountain. There was not just a single abode on this mountain. Thus, the scene of Ling Han dragging Yu Wuti up the mountain was also witnessed by many people. They were all stunned. That was Yu Wuti, a dignified and great ninth heaven celestial king who had an old man who was a second tier heavenly venerate. Why was he being dragged around as if he was a dead dog? And who is that fierce guy that was dragging around Yu Wuti? Those people that had been in the Martial Academy with Ling Han at the same time had basically already gone to the realm battlefield. It was only a rare few that were still staying here. Hence, no one recognized Ling Han. When had such a freak appeared in the Martial Academy? Yu Wuti felt completely humiliated, being dragged around in circles inside the Martial Academy. How was he supposed to continue strutting around in the future? As soon as someone mentioned today's matter, he would probably have to escape with his tail between his legs, right? Yu Wuti gritted his teeth. He swore that he would definitely ask his father to step in and have him blast Ling Han into dust. Ah, he screamed in pain. The friction between his body and the ground caused his skin to split apart, and blood flowed copiously behind him. This was because Ling Han had exerted a frightening power on his body, and added with the fact that the ground here had been tempered by heavenly venerates before, it was extremely hard. It was like using a millstone to grind soybeans. Even if Yu Wuti was a ninth heaven celestial king, he could not bear this. Furthermore, his cultivation level had already been sealed off, so there was no way he could use regulations to protect himself. Ling Han did not feel the slightest bit of sympathy. Ever since Yu Wuti had touched his son and grandson, Ling Han had already sentenced him to death. Ling Han ignored everyone's attention and proceeded the whole way up the mountain. Everyone was extremely curious and followed him. At the same time, there were naturally people who reported the situation to the authorities of the Martial Academy. This commotion was quite large. Before Ling Han had dragged his hostage to the summit, the people above had already gotten the news, and all came out. Be brother Yu. When he saw how Yu Wuti was being dragged on the ground, Cheng Feiwen was astonished. What was going on here? So you are Cheng Feiwen? Ling Han asked. How dare you? You actually dare humiliate a disciple of the Martial Academy like this? Cheng Feiwen reprimanded loudly. Within the grounds of the Martial Academy, as long as the difference in cultivation level was no more than 2 cultivation levels, they could attack freely. As long as no one was killed and no serious injury that could not be healed was inflicted, that was fine. However, being able to wound others did not mean that humiliation would be tolerated. Being like Ling Han, dragging Yu Wuti around like a dead dog, had indeed surpassed limits. Ling Han nodded and stretched out a hand to grab Cheng Feiwen. Cheng Feiwen hurriedly retreated. Ling Han had captured even Yu Wuti, and Cheng Feiwen's battle prowess could only be considered on the same level as Yu Wuti's. It was definitely impossible that he would be a match for Ling Han. However, Ling Han's battle prowess could match a second-tier heavenly venerate. How could a mere ninth heaven celestial king be able to escape from him? He laid down his palm, and Cheng Feiwen was already captured in Ling Han's grasp. What do you want to do? Chung Feiwen was both furious and stunned. Ling Han did not answer. He tied Chung Feiwen with the chain as well, and dragged the two of them down the mountain. Ah! Chung Feiwen released an outraged roar. This was an extraordinary humiliation. Ling Han only ignored him. He was going to find the third person. Everyone was watching. This guy had seriously trampled over the rules of the Martial Academy, so an elite would definitely step in to suppress him. At that time, how is this matter going to be resolved? Clang, clang, clang. The chain scraped the ground, causing an ear-piercing sound, and Yu Wuti and Chung Feiwen were both yelling in pain. Their cultivation levels had been sealed off. Amidst the friction, their skin had split apart and blood flowed, leaving bloody traces behind them on the ground. If they were not both celestial kings, merely this kind of blood loss would be enough to kill them. Even so, they were both battered and mangled, making for a tragic sight. A great many people did not know the truth of the matter, and were whispering among themselves, talking about how cruel Ling Han was to actually treat disciples of the Martial Academy like this. Have you had enough? Just when Ling Han had reached the foot of the mountain, he heard a voice sound out in his ears. Ling Han raised his head, his eyes looking towards the mountain peak in the distance. He shook his head. Not enough. Only he could hear this voice. Thus, when they saw how Ling Han was talking to himself, everyone felt confused. Who was he talking to? And what did he mean? Not enough? What was not enough? Sigh. A low sigh rang out by everyone's ears, and a man in gray robes appeared. He said, "Because you have acted due to your family being injured, I allowed you to punish the culprits, but now you have gone too far. Lord Crimson Clouds." Everyone fell to their knees. This was a second-tier Heavenly Venerate, and also the strongest elite presently in the Martial Academy. Yu Wuti and Chung Feiwen came back to their senses, and both of them cried out loudly, "Please give us justice, Lord Crimson Clouds!" To publicly humiliate the disciples of the Martial Academy within the grounds of the Martial Academy was a definite breach of rules, and how could the Crimson Clouds Heavenly Venerate bluff through the matter as if nothing had happened in full public like this? That was impossible. These two people wanted to provoke the Crimson Clouds Heavenly Venerate to step in and punish Ling Han. Ling Han was expressionless. Previously, when these people humiliated and wounded my son, have they not gone too far as well? 1 against 1 is a spar, so what is ganging up on him all at once? Since they are not abiding by the rules, what need is there for me to abide by the rules as well? Then please do not blame me. The Crimson Clouds Heavenly Venerate sighed, and stretched out a hand to grab Ling Han. If Ling Han was merely dealing with Yu Wuti in private, the Heavenly Venerate would possibly turn a blind eye to it, but that was no longer possible now. If he still made no move, what would happen to the authority of the Martial Academy? Ling Han humphed and delivered a punch in response. Pum! Their 2 blows crashed together, instantly causing a super great storm. Furthermore, those with sharp eyesight could still see that the Crimson Clouds Heavenly Venerate had actually been sent flying. Heavens, a second-tier Heavenly Venerate had moved, and he was actually no match for Ling Han. After the storm dispersed, everyone could clearly see that Ling Han was still standing proudly in his original position, his back straight and upright, his expression determined, and his eyes cold, bearing a strong killing intent. Today he was determined to make these people who had injured his son and grandson pay the price that their act deserved, no matter who came. Gask! Meanwhile, the Crimson Clouds Heavenly Venerate inhaled sharply. Who was he? He immediately discovered that that last blow from Ling Han was a completely physical blow, and Ling Han had not drawn on the great power of heaven and earth. But even so, it had still overwhelmed him. Though the Crimson Clouds had not reached consummate level for second tier, he was still a second-tier Heavenly Venerate, and he was actually outmatched. What kind of freak was this? and Yu Wudi and Chung Feiwen's expressions were filled with despair. Not even a second tier, Heavenly Venerate, was a match for Ling Han. If that was really the case, then even if the Imperial Void Heavenly Venerate returned, would he be capable of suppressing Ling Han? Heavenly Venerates possessed unimaginable privileges. As long as they did not side with Hysteria, what was the simple matter of humiliating a ninth heaven celestial king worth? Would they ever manage to get revenge for today's humiliation? Chapter 2760. 2760. Not interfering. Chapter 2760. 2760. Not interfering. 2760. Not interfering. Everyone shook their head. Just because Yu Wudi had a second tier, Heavenly Venerate, for a father backing him up, he had gathered accomplices to bully Ling Jinxue. How could he have imagined that the latter, too, had a second tier, Heavenly Venerate for a father? See, the latter's old man had come to get vengeance. Could this be blamed on Ling Han, who would have no temper when his son was being bullied right under his nose? You are not at the second tier, the Crimson Cloud's Heavenly Venerate spoke up. His voice was filled with certainty. A second tier was definitely not like this, and he was very sure of that. If he wasn't a second tier, then which tier was he? Everyone was curious. Ling Han had just exchanged a single blow with the Crimson Cloud's Heavenly Venerate, and had not fallen into any disadvantage at all in terms of strength. At the very least, he should be a second tier Heavenly Venerate, right? Ling Han smiled. No. The Crimson Cloud's Heavenly Venerate was filled with confusion. The other party had clearly not extracted the fundamental power of the Genesis world, and was capable of matching him purely with his own strength. In fact, he was even slightly superior, so the other's cultivation level definitely had to be third tier and above. But the problem here was, why hadn't he used his full power? To get revenge for your son, you're already creating such a big commotion in the Martial Academy. What other reservations would you have? Could it be? His eyes flickered, and a possibility rose up in his mind, causing his whole body to tremble. Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate, he blurted out. When these words fell, a wave of commotion arose among the crowd. A pseudo-Heavenly Venerate? How could that be? What kind of massive joke was being played here? Was there any pseudo-Heavenly Venerate that was capable of matching a second-tier Heavenly Venerate? The problem here was that this massive joke had been blurted out by the mouth of the Crimson Cloud's Heavenly Venerate, a genuine second-tier Heavenly Venerate. How could he be mistaken? Was his insight inferior to theirs? Would he deliberately try to scare them with such alarming words? Ling Han had no intention of hiding the fact. He nodded. That's right. You are Ling Han, that Ling Han from an epoch ago. The Crimson Cloud's Heavenly Venerate continued. He could recall now. An epoch ago he had still been a first-tier Heavenly Venerate, and he had heard that a fierce guy had arrived at the first spatial plane and had easily charged his way into the general leaderboard. At the time, the Crimson Clouds had been thinking that when Ling Han advanced into Heavenly Venerable tier and entered into the second spatial plane, he would take a good look at this newly rising star. But in the end, Ling Han had disappeared. However, Wu Haoyang, who had shared fame with Ling Han, emerged as a new force and soared in status. By now, he was already a fourth-tier Heavenly Venerate, equal to Xian Chihu and Lin Yulian. Together, they were called the Three Kings, and were characters that even the Crimson Clouds could only look up at with admiration. Originally, it had been thought that Ling Han could only serve as a background for Wu Haoyang. Yet everyone had never imagined that he would have appeared once again after so many years had passed. A pseudo-Heavenly Venerate could match a second-tier Heavenly Venerate. Then when he reached fourth-tier Hiss, the Crimson Cloud's Heavenly Venerate did not dare think further. Just how strong would this lord become in future? Ling Han, this is the Martial Academy after all. How about you take a step back? He persuaded. Firstly, He had a favorable opinion of Ling Han's future prospects. And secondly, Ling Han had also used strength to show that he possessed the ability to match a second-tier heavenly venerate and become his equal. Naturally, the actual heavenly venerate was willing to stop putting on airs. Yu Wudi and Cheng Feiwen were both extremely depressed. They were the victims here, and the man was actually persuading the culprit kindly right in front of them. Ling Han shook his head. Impossible. Today, I will definitely make the criminals pay the price. You are the real criminal here. Yu Wudi and Cheng Feiwen were both shouting mentally, yet they could only emit moans with their mouths due to the pain. Ling Han continued to drag the two of them forwards, and the Crimson Cloud's heavenly venerate's expression was ugly. He should stop Ling Han, but he had just come for his shift to oversee the Martial Academy, and he was the only heavenly venerate in the whole Martial Academy. He knew himself was no match for Ling Han, so how could he manage to stop him? If he stepped forwards to pester Ling Han, that would only be asking for his own humiliation. There might be groundbreaking news of a second-tier heavenly venerate being outmatched by a pseudo-heavenly venerate. In his eyes, his reputation was far more important than the lives of Yu Wudi and company. If they died, that would be it. In any case, the Crimson Clouds had already tried to stop Ling Han. It was just that he had not managed to succeed. "Brother Ling, behave yourself," the Crimson Cloud's heavenly venerate said solemnly, then turned and left. He would report this matter to the higher-ups. As for how Ling Han would be dealt with in the future, that would have to depend on the will of those powerful figures. He had left. Everyone's mouth was wide open, unable to speak. Aren't you here to oversee the Martial Academy? Now, someone is committing a crime in public, and you are actually not interfering at all? It is not that Lord Crimson Clouds does not wish to interfere, but rather, this man is too strong, so even Lord Crimson Clouds cannot subdue him. Someone revealed the truth of the matter. Ling Han, Lord Crimson Clouds has said before that this is a character from an epoch ago. Ah, I remember now, there was indeed a fierce guy an epoch ago. Have you guys seen the names of Zhang San and Li Si on the Eternal Stone? That had been left behind by Ling Han. Also, it is said that when he was at the realm battlefield, he had only taken over 12,000 years to charge into the top 100 of the general leaderboard. He is definitely extremely freakish. You guys know Wu Haoyang, right? In the past, Ling Han had fully suppressed Wu Haoyang and claimed the honor of being the strongest of that era. Gasp. Everyone inhaled sharply. It might be very abstract to speak of other matters, but Wu Haoyang's great reputation was too prominent. He had only used 2 billion years to become a 4th-tier heavenly venerate, but it was too difficult to complete the step from 4th tier to 5th tier, and that was why he had been staying at 4th tier all this while. He was the strongest prodigy in all of history, and together with Xan Chihu and Lin Yulian, the three were collectively known as the 3 great heavenly kings. In the future, it was possible that they could attain 7th tier, and were the hopes of the Genesis world. And in the past, Ling Han had been slightly superior to even Wu Haoyang, so it was naturally understandable how he could be so freakish. Ling Han was expressionless. He walked in the Martial Academy and found the people that had bullied his son one after another. Some had not gotten the news yet, and he managed to capture them right in their abodes. Some of them had received the news and fled, but there was absolutely no way they could manage to flee from Ling Han. He captured them and took them back to the Martial Academy. There were already as many as 12 people that were tied up in the chains, and these were all the culprits that had ganged up on Ling Jinxue previously. Aside from Yu Wudi, Ling Han hung the other 11 people up. Then he stomped on Yu Wudi, his foot crushing the other's face. In the celestial realm, this man could still have been considered Ling Han's match, but now he was no longer qualified at all. Ling Han, just because your cultivation level is higher than mine, you are bullying me. What is so impressive about that? When my father returns, he will definitely behead you. Yu Wuti cried out loudly, his eyes spitting fire. Ling Han nodded. I have some debts to settle with Imperial Void as well. If he returns, I will kill him. Yu Wuti's demeanor involuntarily weakened. Even the Crimson Cloud's Heavenly Venerate was no match for Ling Han, and the Imperial Void Heavenly Venerate had not advanced to the second tier very long ago, so there was even less chance that the latter could be a match for Ling Han. Let me ask you, do you regret? Ling Han asked. Yu Wuti did not dare to speak tough anymore. He definitely had to yield for the moment, so he nodded. Yes. Do you know the error of your ways? Ling Han asked again. I was wrong. Yu Wuti was very well behaved. Good. Ling Han nodded. He tapped out a finger. Pa! One of Yu Wuti's arms instantly exploded, turning into a rain of blood. Ah! Yu Wuti screamed out in pain and almost passed out. Originally, he had thought that submitting would make Ling Han spare him, but clearly he had thought wrong. Yet Ling Han did not have the slightest sympathy. He tapped out another finger. Pa! Yu Wuti's other arm exploded as well. Ling Han did not stop at all. After another tap of his finger, Yu Wuti's legs exploded, one after the other. There were people watching them, and none of them dared to make a noise. This guy was too ruthless, wasn't he? Just because Yu Wuti had beaten Ling Han's son, Ling Han actually dared to execute punishment in full public in the martial academy like this. Was he planning to execute 1,000 wounds on Yu Wuti while he was alive? In the future, they definitely could not become enemies with Ling Jinxue. No, they had best hide as far away as possible when they encountered anyone by the surname of Ling. Chapter 2761. 2761 settled. Chapter 2761. 2761 settled. 2761 settled. Ling Han aimed precisely for this. Who would dare to bully the descendants of the Lin clan in the martial academy, or the descendants of the Wu clan? None, because both Lin Luo and Wu Jihong have established a reputation of being invincible. Everyone knew that the two of them had already leaped out of the limits of rules. If they wanted to kill, they could, and no one could stop them. Thus, there would be no one that would dare trifle with their family and friends, either because they would only push themselves onto the path of no return. Ling Han also wished to establish such a ferocious reputation, guaranteeing the absolute safety of his family and friends. Otherwise, how was he supposed to clash with his full power against Hysteria in the realm battlefield? Brother Ling. The Crimson Cloud's Heavenly Venerate appeared once more. His expression was very complicated. Please carefully consider before you do anything. I have already considered very carefully. Ling Han threw a punch. Pa! Yu Wuti's head was instantly shattered to bits. Clang! The heaven and earth cried in grief, unleashing a haze of blood rain. Ling Han's eyes sharpened, and he exclaimed to the heavens, "This kind of evil villain died, and is actually worthy of the grief of the heaven and earth? Go back!" He unleashed his might. Boom! The haze of blood rain instantly reversed its flow, and as Ling Han's might surged, it resounded in all of their hearts, forcefully suppressing the grief and sorrow that the heaven and earth had stimulated. This was practically heaven-defying. Everyone hissed sharply, though cultivating itself was an act that defied the heavens otherwise. One would not be blasted by a heavenly tribulation every time they had a breakthrough in truth. Cultivators were also attached to the heavenly tribulation, just like how celestial kings represented regulations. Even a heavenly venerate would need to draw on the fundamental power of the Genesis world to be able to unleash their full might. The difference was that a heavenly venerate had transcended, so even if they were in other dimensions, they would still possess great power. Similarly, they would have to extract the fundamental power of the Genesis world, which was not limited to a specific dimension. Hence, even a heavenly venerate actually would not purposely oppose the heaven and earth. Yet Ling Han had forcefully reversed the grief of the heaven and earth, and there was no actual significance to it, either. What was the point? According to a mighty figure, disobeying the heaven and earth would have extremely severe consequences, and even a heavenly venerate would have to be cautious. Quang! The furious sound of thunder rang out in the heaven and earth, and bolts of lightning struck down rapidly, targeting Ling Han. Initially, a transcendent dimension would have extremely great tolerance. Perhaps only when a seventh-tier heavenly venerate unleashed his full power would he then be targeted. However, who asked Ling Han to purposely go against the heavens? This naturally enraged the heaven and earth. Ling Han was unafraid and merely looked coldly at the skies. His strength was not dependent on the heaven and earth, and it was completely based on himself alone. My Tao uses myself as the core. Even if I am not in the form of a dimension, I myself am a dimension, Ling Han inwardly declared. Even if he were to be despised by the heaven and earth, and he would be completely blocked off from extracting the power of heaven and earth, he was not concerned at all. This heavenly tribulation lasted for the whole period of half a month before dispersing, showing that the hatred that the heaven and earth had for Ling Han had reached an extremely high level. When the Crimson Cloud's heavenly venerate reported Ling Han's actions to the higher-ups at the Rising Cloud's Heavenly Academy, it immediately caused a great commotion. Some mighty figures supported the course of punishing Ling Han severely. This was a public breach of the rules of the Martial Academy, and it by itself was a great wrong. Furthermore, Yu Wudi was the son of a heavenly venerate. If such a matter was condoned, how were the heavenly venerates here supposed to focus on fighting? Oh, if even the safety of their family could not be guaranteed, then whose families were they fighting to protect? But there were also powerful figures that supported Ling Han. It was indeed Yu Wudi who had broken the rules first. Not only had he used his overwhelming power to bully, he had told others to gang up on Ling Jianxue. It was no wonder that Ling Han would be furious. Of course, killing Wu Yudi had gone a little too far. How was he to be dealt with? Both arguments had their supporters, and no result was produced even after long periods of debate. They could only continue to forward the report further up the hierarchy, for it to be decided by those seventh-tier heavenly venerates. After all, Ling Han was really too freakish. As a pseudo-heavenly venerate, he was capable of matching a second-tier heavenly venerate. This kind of talent was what the Genesis world needed the most. Very soon the powerful figures spoke. This action of Ling Han had gone too far, but because the Genesis world needed a prodigy like him, he would be allowed to redeem himself with battle merits. After he broke through to the heavenly venerable tier, he would be sent to fight in the realm battlefield. This was equivalent to no punishment at all. When the news came out, this naturally almost killed the Imperial Void heavenly venerate with fury. Yu Wudi was his only son, and he treasured him as much as his own life. For the sake of the latter's future prospects, he had even deliberately sealed him, which showed what great expectations he had had for Yu Wudi. But now his son was gone. He wanted to immediately charge back to fight to death with Ling Han, but he very soon suppressed this impulse. Not even the Crimson Clouds was a match for Ling Han, and the Imperial Void would be even less of a match. He begged for an audience with the sealed emotion, heavenly venerable. His master was extremely freakish, and was already a third-tier heavenly venerate by now. If the sealed emotion, heavenly venerable, was willing to interfere, then suppressing Ling Han would naturally be a piece of cake. Master, please help me. The Imperial Void heavenly venerate knelt in front of the sealed emotion, heavenly venerable. Ever since advancing to the Celestial King tier, he had practically never knelt in front of the sealed emotion, heavenly venerable again. But now, for the sake of his son, he had fallen to his knees once more. The sealed emotion, heavenly venerable, sat calmly. After advancing to the third tier, his aura had become increasingly subtle. Being able to cultivate to the level of heavenly venerable tier in such a barren place like the celestial realm represented astonishing natural talent by itself. Hence, after the sealed emotion arrived at the Flaming Frost realm, He enjoyed a great burst in cultivation level, but third tier was practically as far as he could go. Without any special circumstances, there would never be any hopes of him reaching fourth tier. His eyes closed, he said lowly, "I have never expected that a mere pawn would actually develop to the level he has reached today." The imperial void, Heavenly Venerate, was filled with even more resentment. Previously, he had wanted to kill Ling Han repeatedly, yet the latter had always managed to escape. If his resolution had been just the slightest bit firmer in the past, he might have already killed Ling Han by now. How could so many things have happened then? This line of Yuan Sheng wishes to make a comeback. The sealed emotion, Heavenly Venerable's eyes snapped open, blazing light shooting right into the heavens. It would not be convenient to make a move in the Martial Academy, but ultimately he would have to come here. Once he is on his way, I will personally move to snipe him. He withdrew his gaze and returned once more to that icy, dead man's face. "Thank you, Master." The imperial void, Heavenly Venerate, was overjoyed. With the interference of a third tier, Heavenly Venerate, there was no doubt that Ling Han would die. No one had expected that Ling Han would actually be able to resolve such a great crisis so easily, but upon deeper thought, if anyone could match a second-tier Heavenly Venerate while he himself was only a pseudo-Heavenly Venerate, wouldn't he also get special treatment? Moreover, it was Yu Wudi himself who had been courting death, and had been the first to break the rules. And those at the realm battlefield had also heard of Ling Han's story. A great many people felt rueful. That Ling Han from the past had returned once more. As expected of Demon King Ling, he had caused such a great commotion immediately upon his reappearance. But Ling Han kept a very low profile. He just accompanied his son and grandson, and only once he had seen that Ling Jianxue's and his son's injuries were all healed did he set out with the Empress to search for the core of the Flaming Frost Realm. This took them quite a few years, but there were a great many pseudo-Heavenly Venerates that had taken this step here. Hence, the location of the core was no secret. Primarily, it was due to the time needed for the journey. The core of a transcendent dimension was very hard to approach. The journey towards the core was fraught with considerable dangers. This had surpassed regulations. A ninth heaven, celestial king, would be killed by the slightest moment of carelessness. Yet Ling Han and the Empress were both already pseudo-Heavenly Venerates, and their battle prowess had reached the level of second and first tier Heavenly Venerate, respectively, so there naturally would not be much difficulty. After 70-odd years, they finally arrived at the location of the core of the realm. They could not approach it. An 18-colored light sphere was glowing radiantly, its beauty indescribable. But that kind of frightening wave of power caused even Ling Han to feel his heart jolt. He did not dare draw near to it at all. "Be careful. You have defied the heavens previously, so it is extremely possible that you would be deliberately targeted by the heaven and earth," the Empress said. Ling Han nodded. He naturally had no fear of a heavenly tribulation, but the heaven and earth could hide away that unique power and prevent him from comprehending it. It was also possible that they would stimulate this power to attack him. Who asked him to take the initiative to come here?